Welcome to the Townsend Board of Selectmen's meeting for Wednesday, December 20th at 6 p.m. I'd like to call the meeting to order and have a roll call.
Sue Licio is present.
Gordon Clark, present.
And Cindy King is present. If you could join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to announce that the meeting's being tape recorded for Channel 9.
Channel 9.
Channel 9 and YouTube. And I'd like to ask, is there anyone else in the audience that's going to be recording? Lisa is going to be recording on the meeting. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. And Chairman's additions and deletions. We're going to be deleting item number 4.12. That's the Townsend Meeting Hall policy. We've been asked to table that for now, so we're going to skip that. And I'd like to get right into appointments and hearings. Votes may be taken. Brian Keating from MRPC is here to talk about, excuse me, the CDBG grant application. Do you need us to sign in to help with
No, that would be for the public hearing.
Oh, okay.
Actually, it wouldn't be a bad idea, now that I think of it.
Does anybody have a piece of paper?
I have
that we can- I know with the CDBG application process, which Brian's, I'm sure, going to talk to us about, that as part of the application, the more people involved, the better. So whenever we're talking about CDBG, we take people's names that want to put their name down.
Madam Chairman, here's some legal paper. Would that be legal?
That's legal enough.
All right.
And we can just, those that want to admit that they were here,
Every name
helps our
right?
process
Okay.
for the packet that Brian will be hopefully
looks like
someday
it's,
submitting.
The hot seat here, I think.
Did you want
If you put one,
just name and
Name and,
date on there.
you know, I don't think we need address, maybe, yeah, just names, that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll assume that.
Gordy?
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's that time of year again. Thank you to the town for talking with MRPC, Montezut Regional Planning Commission. Of course, we are one of 13 regional planning agencies in the state that work with, you know, especially the smaller towns in the regions to help provide planning technical assistance, as well as something that I'm very interested in here is helping towns to create and submit a community development block grant. This grant is due, this application is due on March 2nd of next year. And the pretty time-consuming and labor-intensive to get ready. A few of the things that absolutely have to happen for the grant to be legitimate and eligible for funding would be this the scheduling of public hearings. So that'd be one thing I would like to talk about tonight. But the first thing I guess we really need to do is talk a little bit about the grant itself, and if the town is would provide a vote to say yes, we'll apply for the work with MRPC to submit a grant for this year. CDBG is a primarily intended to help low to moderate income individuals and families in the 300 towns in Massachusetts that are eligible for the Community Development Fund. Approximately 37 cities of over 50,000 residents receive it automatically from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. There are also approximately 15, 16, something around there, what we call mini entitlements. Those 50 cities are what we call entitlements. They get it automatically. They don't need to apply. They just need to be in compliance with how they spend the money. The rest of the towns in Massachusetts work with the State Department of Housing and Community Development, who administers the CDBG grant that they receive from HUD. So we work with a few towns, and we hope to work with 4 towns this year in terms of submitting the application. We typically, towns are eligible for projects that directly benefit low to moderate income individuals. A popular program, of course, is the housing rehab. If you are income eligible for the program and you need repairs to your home that improves the health and safety of your being able to live in that home. It could be a new heating system, a new roof, new windows and doors, septic wells, anything that affects your health and safety are eligible repairs. Other projects are public social services. One thing we have been doing over the last few years is a supplement to the LIHEAP fuel program. We just call it the Fuel Assistance Program. Again, income eligible folks. And when I say income eligible, that is at or below 80% of the area median income as defined by HUD. We can provide all of these guidelines, all of this information in subsequent public forums if we need to, and we'll be publicizing this in newspapers and perhaps through cable access as one of our hope is to utilize that as much as possible this year. So Townsend this year is eligible to apply up to $800,000. If applying individually, there is a question if whether Townsend is interested in applying in a regional application with, we're suggesting the town of Lancaster. The benefits of applying jointly, there's no point value to applying jointly. Just on an analysis of what was funded last year, there were 12 regional applications funded. I'm sorry, 12 regional applications submitted. Of those 12, 10 were funded. It's just something to think about. There is, in an analysis of what was scored, let me backtrack a little bit and say, one of the, when we talk about low to moderate income towns, the state has divided the community development towns into a scale of 1 to 10. 10 being those towns that have over 51% of their population low to moderate income. The other towns are then going down accordingly to 1. Townsend is a 6. So right off, the town loses 4 points in scoring. The towns that are receiving 10 and 9, they get 10 points, 9 points. There's a point-for-point scoring in that way. So we can certainly make up for those points. Last year, Townsend missed it by 1 point last year. We scored a 56 in our application last year, and the last town to have gotten funded was a 57. So we can certainly make up for these points. Another town that scored a 6 was funded, as well as 2 towns that were 5. So it's certainly doable. You can certainly make an application that works and get scored. So Townsend's not out of the running by any means. Okay, let's see. So what we need to do from this point, if a town agrees to move forward, we can discuss whether the town wants to try individually or in partnership with Lancaster. I don't know if that's the first thing we want to think about, discuss,
I think regionally would probably be.
What is Lancaster's?
There are 5.
So they would bring us down a half point.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Because they're a 5 and we're a 6. And, well, it's 800,000 if we went single. What's the threshold if it's a joint? A regional application can apply for up to 1 million. So that means each town, now in the past, the lead town would have a 65% share and the other town would have 35% share. That's no longer applicable. So whoever was the lead, the towns would negotiate. Somehow we'd figure out
whether it be 50/50 or what. So say it would be $500,000. So applying individually would get you $800,000. Applying as a regional, $500,000. Probably, unless there was, the scores were otherwise. Townsend's population is slightly higher. Maybe that would be counted, figured into how the money is allocated.
Sure. Question, why Lancaster? Why not another town?
The other towns, well, those are the towns that we're working with, okay? And again, it's just a suggestion, but Shirley is a 9, Winchendon is an 8. They are going in individually, and plus their score, their allocations this year are reduced because they were awarded last year, so they have limited allocations.
So help me understand the rating again. 1 to 10, 10 being the
The
most
most needy,
likely?
yes, the most needy or the highest amount.
And
of-
Lancaster less needy than us?
Yes.
Which could mean that would bump us up.
Drops down by.
They would average the scores, yes.
So we might be in a better position to go on our own.
You could be, yes. I mean,
Except 10 out of 12 regionals were approved last year.
that's, again, now I...
And how many individuals?
Oh, there were 32 awards. But again, I just did this analysis today, that the highest, just look at what was in terms of LMI scores. A 10, going from first highest rated down, 10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 10. Then there was a three-town regional, 9, 9, 9. The next score was a 9. A 9, 7, 10, 9, then a 6. Was the 10th, scored a 61 and was funded.
Who was that?
That was the town of Hull. North Brookfield was a 7 that was funded. Then there was a 9 and an 8. Shelbourne was number 14 at 6.
So we're kind of in trouble anyway.
It's very competitive. It would be, you'd really need to, get every point available, and which we can certainly do that.
And we're starting with a 6?
We're starting with a 6, so you lose 4 out the top. So the highest score last year was a 64. The lowest score was a 57. So there certainly is room there to, for those points, based on last year's score, of course. There is
Does
room to lose
Lancaster
those
want to
4
go in with us?
points.
Have you talked to them?
They're
Or they don't care?
their game, yeah, that they would, but they're also thinking, well, what is the benefit? Again, I just point out there are 10 of 12. I mean, that has to mean something, but when you go to DHCD and ask them, no, there's no point. The only scoring advantage to going in regionally is it's a tiebreaker. If there was a regional that was tied in points with an individual town, the regional would get that.
Did we benefit because we didn't get this last year?
No, I don't. Every application year is, no, I don't, there's no advantage to that.
Okay.
You need to just go in on the strength of the application.
The inverse is a disadvantage. If you got funded last year, you can only
But
get
they
partial
don't
funding
give it
this
to you
year.
the other
Yeah, you
time?
can't, no single town can get more than 1.3 million in any 2 years.
Oh.
So you can apply for the 1 million, but then the next year you can't, so towns, there are plenty of towns that get it every year, but they're limited in certain years. Like, for instance, yeah, Shirley, I think, got more last year than they were able to get.
When do you need us to tell you?
As soon as we can, because again, we like to get started with the public forums, the public hearings. I'd like to schedule, we need to get a public hearing scheduled, which is an absolute necessity, it's a requirement. And of course, we need 15, the noticing period. And so that when you start looking at the calendars and counting back, it gets pretty...
So should we
Starts
at
getting
least set
pretty
that date without making the decision right away about the,
I'm just thinking the wording of the hearing notice
need to
assumes
know.
that the town is moving forward.
well, I'm going to make we haven't voted yet, but I'm gonna- I assume we're going to move forward. We haven't decided on the regional versus individual, but
And when do you need that decision? Do you need them both?
we have to set a public hearing and we need... a
Right,
certain
the public, and the public hearing would need to indicate whether the town is going individually or in a joint application.
Okay, but if Lancaster hasn't decided yet, then that would mean we're held up until.
No, not that happened. I think they would if you guys did, and, you know, but I think they would go individually as well. I think I told them, let me find out what Townsend wants to do tonight, and they would.
What are the other criteria for acceptance for grant? Is it just by?
Oh, no, there's a whole, you have to, the application is scored on, right here.
We have to get applications and...
You're right, well, you have to get the grant application. How it's scored is, there's a need section, you have to define the need. Last year, one of our readers took points off, I don't know why, because we didn't pull in regional and state scores to compare, and I'm sure we did that. Anyways, but the other reader gave us full points. So there's a definition, you got to describe the severity, you want to describe the impact, then there's a feasibility, what is the design, how is it being managed, does the budget make sense, you need to complete an environmental review, and your procurement needs to be sound, and you need to design milestones for the projects. These are all things that, you know...
Those are things that we have to do.
Well,
Or are you
With
going to
you.
do those for us?
exactly, yeah. I mean, we have a template, and we have a system
We're
that
lacking
should work.
the staffing.
I was just going to say,
We're
you
lacking
who'd you
little
work with
staffing.
before, Karen?
Who works for them
Yes,
now.
yeah, right. Well, the one thing we absolutely need to show in the management plan is the accounting is probably the most important, having the accounting and treasury functions staffed and working, because there is, you know, the funds do go through the town. Yeah.
All right, accountant, I'm not concerned about. Treasury, I'm not concerned about.
What do you mean by
Staffing,
that?
I am concerned, because that position right now isn't, it's still open.
Well, I mean the land use thing? I don't think that, I think the important thing really is having the financial management. Because that's really, when it comes down to it, it's going to be, the MRPC can work with the board or work with any appointed, it doesn't have to be that position. It can be anything, it could be with this board or with the, you know, the planning board, you know, whoever it may be. But the important thing is having that financial accounting
that's not
system in place.
Okay. So right now, it's, one, do we want to go forward, and two, do we want to do it on our own, and or do we want to do it with Lancaster?
I'm leaning toward alone.
What does Jim think?
Yeah, I was thinking-
Our experience.
I was going to say the same thing. I mean, we're going to lose a half a point on average by regionalizing, so even if we get a bump up, because it's the unspoken rule for regionals, we're starting out behind the 8 ball already, because
Exactly.
they're a lesser score than we are. And we're limited then to 500,000 versus the potential for the 8 if we go in, because we didn't get granted last year, we missed by a point. The other unspoken thing is, those things are looked at. So I would agree with Sue and say going with MRPC as the writing agent, as the admin agent, and going alone.
I would think too, and I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would think too that one advantage to doing it individually might be, it could be less cumbersome in terms of working out all of the details and making sure that the Ts are crossed and the Is are dotted, et cetera.
Yes, well, usually one town is designated the lead town. So for instance, if, say, if Lancaster was the lead, it would be their financing department, their people doing, and then the other town doesn't have a lot of administrative load.
Now, do you anticipate, I mean, you haven't looked at our numbers, have you looked at our numbers yet, the median income, the 80%?
Oh, yeah.
Have we, I don't want to put it this way, but have we gotten worse? Are we in more of a need than we were last year?
No, I think it's,
Are we
in terms
usually
of
saying-
who's eligible, I think the numbers are going, they tend to go up. I have it here.
I mean, are we more eligible? Like, has our median income?
Oh, the LMI score?
Yes.
No,
Have we
that
gotten
hasn't
more?
changed from
Or is
last
it,
year.
that kind of stays because we're using census data that's
Yes,
probably just
from
stagnant
2010,
until we have
right.
another major, okay.
Yeah, that hasn't changed, so you're on to 6.
So that's just based on the last,
Big census.
Right, yes, the
Okay.
census, right. And then, I was going to say, the 80% of AMI for family of 4 is $78,150. For an individual, I believe it's like 54,000, 52,000 maybe. I think I might have it here somewhere. So you're looking, I just have it for the 4.
Okay, but then, I mean, I'm just trying to
Sure.
think of reasons why we might be more eligible than we might have been last year.
And one strength, again, last year, for the last 2 years, we've gone out and we've done a lot of surveys, or what we call pre-applications. If you remember, Townsend, tremendous amount
I think
of...
you had like over 100.
Over 100, yeah. Those are still eligible. Any kind of
Oh, okay.
survey.
So we don't have to redo that work?
We
just
don't have to do that. We could-
Verify that the applications are still valid?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so the need is definitely there. And I think that would go far towards strengthening that. We did have that is a strong part of the application there. Then it's just a question of, identifying the management section, and just making sure we don't have a matching requirement this year. That's one place where we lost 2 points last year, was not being able to leverage 10% of the funding amount. We don't have to worry about that this year.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's one good thing.
Now, is this a federal grant or state?
It's a federal money ultimately, but it's administered by the state.
And is this money already allocated?
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, every day it's another
Right.
newsflash.
Don't know whether it's going to be here next year or not.
What important funding are we going to not need anymore? That, I just, are we at risk of
Yeah.
this?
No, this year the
blowing up?
money is in the bank.
Okay.
Next year, I don't know about next year. I can't say for sure.
But this is money that, because it would be this fiscal year that it's, okay.
This is
Say we go for it.
federal
Get it while
fiscal
we
year.
can.
No, it's the state federal year 17, so that started in, is it
Well, this is 18.
October?
October 1st.
October
federal.
1st, yeah.
Okay, just started
Federal,
October.
federal years, runs by a year behind the state,
So
right?
were they're voting to continue or not?
The
federal
continuing
budget, that's
resolutions.
this money,
Yeah,
this year's
yeah.
money, okay. So if we survive the vote in Congress this week on, okay, I think, have we decided to, one, do it?
Yes, but
Oh, okay.
you guys seem to be much more attuned to this than I am, but I just have one quick question.
Sure.
Mr. Keating, is it all right if I call you Brian?
That's what,
Brian, I just, going back, I had heard a couple concerns that Sue and Cindy had said about the administration of this. And I don't have the basis of knowledge of this type of grant, but I was wondering the nomenclature of how this grant, is there money, I have had dealings with federal grants in the past. In the nomenclature of this grant, is there a place in there for administrative cost?
yes.
So where I'm following this, and Mr. Crowley probably much more knowledgeable than I am, is that I know in the past, we could defer some of our administrative costs through the grant. So I'm thinking about, not a lot, but maybe a couple hours that would be necessary from treasury or accounting to somehow, if the nomenclature allows, and I
Yes.
don't have a basis of knowledge.
Is there a
so-
formula for that already?
Well, there's I think there's a total 27% admin allowed. And I think then that's broken up. There's there's 2 parts. There's what we call program delivery. That's the money where you're actually hiring contractors, and then there's the admin, the buying, the paying the rent and
So,
buying
Madam
paper
Chairman,
clips.
Sue, if it's all right with you, I'm just throwing this out here, as we go forward, if we would give instruction to Brian and Mr. Kryler, when they come back to us for a final thing, so to have that figured out, what it would cost to do that type of thing, is that good or bad idea?
One thing that Brian's not saying
We don't
is
know.
that's where MRPC gets paid.
Right.
So the reason he's here on behalf of his entity is that they do the work, they do the application,
Right.
they administer the program if it's granted, and they get their fee out of that admin pot. Not the full available 27, but that's,
Yeah, we
lion's
usually
share of that
do
is
like
theirs.
15%.
Yeah, we use MRPC as a regional planner. We do not have a full-time town planner.
Right.
If we did, we'd be talking to them right now.
Right.
But
And all the
it-
money would be going to the
But it's
town.
certainly doable. I mean, we
Right, but that's why-
take
So the goal,
Winchendon.
the
Yeah.
$10,000 view is that you need to, you're.
This is how we make our living, right? But I don't
That's
think.
expected. On
but
the
I-
other hand, there may be a small piece to help us in tight budgets.
Yeah.
To some, that's.
Yeah, we're
Am I saying
doing that
so?
with Winchendon.
Sometimes I talk a different
So if we
language.
if we were privileged enough to receive the grant, we might, for example, ask, from an administrative perspective, ask someone to work an extra couple hours a week or
And
something.
that's where they would know,
to dedicate
based upon your training
time
experience,
on
what
that.
those hours are.
Yeah,
right?
we could get, 2, 3, 4 hours a week or something, whatever it may be. We would just work it through the budget. That's certainly doable. You know,
I'll
as-
go with that. Thank you, Sue and Cindy.
So is there a motion to?
Is there a preferred motion?
I don't think so.
I think it'd be as simple as authorizing the application for CDBG application as a standalone applicant, and for the full available amount of $800,000 with MRPC as our agent.
And do we want to, is part 2 of that, to set a public hearing date?
Yes, it would be good to get a public
How
hearing
much
day.
time do we need to put that out?
Oh, well, let's see, we do want the, I'm scheduling things for like second week in January. We have to go to we want to post it in the Valley Voice, and we can post it publicly as well, but if we have to get it in on, say, if we got something in for next Friday, we would have to get it in by Wednesday. That puts us, Friday gets us, what's next Friday? Friday is the
29th?
29th. Okay, so that means 2 weeks from that. Well, when is the next hearing, next available selectmen's meeting after?
Meeting on the 2nd?
Well, we'd have to go out
It would be the
15 days.
16th would be the next,
The
probably,
16th, yeah.
one that he could meet the
The posting.
notice requirements.
Oh, so the 16th of January?
Yeah. Is that a Tuesday?
Tuesday.
That's a Tuesday.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm doing Lancaster as well that night. Could we push it out 1 week? What's the night, is that, would you meet every week now?
Every other.
Every other, okay. Let's keep it the 16th, and either I or someone from the agency will be here.
If
John,
there's any
you can-
problems, you'll contact
And that's not,
Yeah.
that's not like a big,
Right,
it's a formality we have to have.
It's a formality.
But it's not a
Heavy lifting.
whole
No, it's not heavy.
serious
Yeah,
questions.
exactly, right.
It's just we have to,
So that would be similar to what we're doing now, only it's a public hearing.
You're right, just a public.
people have the
Discuss
opportunity,
it.
but it's, there's
People have the
usually not a
opportunity.
lot of issues, and it's usually just, we do it.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
Maybe just a suggestion, so we could do that at 5:30 or something like that.
Well, I mean,
Depending on how much work we have the rest of the night. Whatever, you.
well,
work
let's
it.
set
Yeah.
make it, just set the date as of the 16th in the motion, we can schedule the time
okay.
after.
Yeah, and then I can, yeah, as long as I probably have a notice ready to go, I just have to plug in the date and the
Because you
time.
still just have to coordinate your
Yeah.
time with
Right.
Lancaster's a couple towns over.
Do you do your public hearings right at 6 or
It
6:05?
depends on what we need to do.
Chairman's discretion.
Yeah, depends on what, if
Okay.
it can't be till 7:30, then.
Then can we talk outside of this meeting about that, or is that allowed?
Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
With Jim.
Jim,
Jim would be
okay.
the best person to,
All right, okay, so I can,
So, Madam Chair, I move that the board approve entering into a CDBG grant application as an individual town with the MRPC as our administrator. Is that a correct language? And that we set a hearing for January 16th, time to be decided.
Second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
can we ask the audience if anyone has any questions about CDBG or the program and how it might work or benefit them? Okay.
I did have one question.
Sure.
So the thing that you put in last year, what was the project for?
That was for housing rehab and fuel assistance.
And would that be the same this year?
It could, yes, well, the housing rehabilitation is the most popular, or most of the funding goes to housing projects, and that is the most readily funded. Something I really would like to talk about, either at the public hearing or very soon, is the fact that there are other eligible funding, but a lot of projects need to be bid-ready or shovel-ready. So this is why, in addition to this, we had started our committee last year, but if we can keep that going and open it up to the public, maybe I'd like, again, that's what I'd like to use the cable access for, but not, maybe not, not for this application, but for other applications going out, Is there street projects? Is there, childcare? There's any number of projects or activities that could be funding. The town would just need to identify it and substantiate the need and how it's going to work. But that just takes a lot of, just takes
And I
some
think that's a
planning.
good segue into talking about my committee that I've really been trying to get off the ground for a couple of years with Brian's assistance, is the Community Strategy Development Committee. I know the next thing on our agenda is to appoint someone to that committee, but that's one of the important parts of having that committee. I mean, it sounds like it's got a fancy name to it, and it might, lack, like, what is that for? And I call it, my pet name for that committee is the Grant Committee, but that's not even legitimate. It is more of a a community development committee where different people in the community get together, and without regard to actually being on a planning committee necessarily, but what do we as a community need, and what kind of things is available to us, in particular
And
things
it-
like the CDBG grant, and there's some other things that I think Jim is are you going to mention the other stuff, the patronicity and stuff? There's different things that are out there that are available to us as a community to access that we really haven't been accessing, and whether they be through MRPC or through other organizations that are part of economic development or community development.
Yeah,
But having
absolutely.
a committee, a standing committee, that's not necessarily going to make bylaws and things, but get together and say what kind of things would benefit us as a community.
I think any
And-
grant application strengthened by resident input.
So I'm going to take this opportunity to ask people to volunteer, send in those volunteer forms to get on this committee so that we can start talking, get things as part of this application, but really for future applications and other things that we can be doing, from everything from bike racks to paving a sidewalk where we don't have one.
Complete streets,
Things like that,
transportation.
like, hey,
It doesn't have
we
to
don't
be
have
just
enough,
CDBG.
like handicap parking, we don't have enough.
Right.
Even if we meet the law, the community might say, hey, we need to, they just cut down too many trees over the last, there might be community things, there's other grants for things like that. But this is one example of having a development committee to do this, so.
That might dovetail nicely with the fact that planning is now working on revising the master plan.
Okay.
Okay? So,
Everything has a little
For it to
spoke to the
dovetail
wheel.
together, if the master plan comes out that this is a certain direction, then, strategy can kind of pick that up and say, well, what does that mean? And,
Even we have a community strategy plan,
Right, well, that's
which
actually,
is over.
actually,
which is
I have
outside the
here,
master plan, yeah.
the community development strategy that the HCD requires to have filed with the application is like a mini master plan.
that's
Now,
what it sounds like.
and it has the same formats. Now, last year it was 7-page requirement. This year they cut it down to 3 pages, so I'm not exactly sure. But they're still
They
requiring
just
it.
don't want to read that many pages.
Right, so what I have here is, I didn't change it substantially, of course, but I just took the 7 pages and put it onto 3 pages. And we will need to submit it with the application, so we would need to have this approved by someone to make sure that, it's still, I think there are a few things in there. If you read it, and we'll need to discuss it. This does need to be discussed at a public forum, as opposed to a public hearing. So we would
Okay.
want to schedule that as well. That doesn't need to be noticed. We want to get it out and advertise it, but it doesn't have
Okay.
the 15-day noticing.
All right, that's fine.
Okay? So I will be in touch this week. Next week, I'm trying to be out, but we'll see. But we can be in, are you in next week?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. And the rest of this week? Okay, so I'll be in touch and we'll move rolling on this, because every minute counts. It's going to be March 2nd, before we know it. That's one good thing about working on CDBG grants. Winters go by like that.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Couple minutes behind, but that's pretty good for us. We have 6:20 water commissioners regarding staffing.
I suppose we'll just It would be good to call our meeting to order. So I will call our meeting to order here at 272 Main Street in the Selectmen Chambers in Town Hall on December 20th at 6:39. Could I have a roll call, please?
Lance Lewin present.
Michael McCacken, President.
Nathan Mattel, present. And I'd also like to say that this meeting is being audio and video recorded. So, I have no additions or deletions other than what we're here for.
Madam Chair, if I may, just to frame the issue, there are 3 points. One is the currently filled but soon to be vacated, if not already just taking time off, and literally already vacated position of a water tech. Second,
No, he's still there.
Second, there's a request for the additional, I'm not certain if it's a water tech, or at one point in time, there was talk about it being something less than a full tech and leading up to a tech, so I don't know if we're
Well, it's a
commissioning
water-
on that.
It's a water tech, depending on the applicant, if he applies and has the correct licenses, then it'll be a water tech. If not, it could be a water tech slash trainee, entry-level position type thing.
And then the last of the 3 is the administrative position. So I think if it please the board, the select board, I think the easiest of those 3 is the currently existing but soon to be vacant position. It's a union position, and in the AFSCME contract between the town and AFSCME for this position, there is language that says the position can't be filled until it is declared vacant by the select board. So if it please the board, a vote to declare the existing water tech position vacant would be in order.
Has that position, I mean, I know we're talking about that,
No, we haven't even sent out a
but has
thing in the
he,
paper yet.
has he submitted?
Yes.
Yes, he's
Okay,
retired.
so, and there is an actual date.
31st, he's all done, yes.
Okay, and what
We
is,
have ascertained possibly keeping him part-time if we could, and he wanted to, but we haven't just, I wasn't at that meeting last week that they talked about it, so.
Yeah, let's just get through this stuff first and then we'll move on.
Yeah,
okay, so do we have a date?
End of this month.
31st.
End
Yeah, the end of
of
the
December
month.
31st?
The 31st is a Sunday, so
29th, he's all done.
29th
Okay.
would be his actual.
And is but he'll be completely off the, I mean, I know
Retired.
he's actually gone on it.
He'll be retired that day.
Sometimes people retire and they're still on the books for 30 days or something.
Nope.
He's actually gone, okay. Do you see any issues where
No, this one, I think
Is
It's
it-
a no-brainer on
necessity,
this one, yeah.
we just have to declare it vacant and then
Posted,
it can post it?
posted, they'll go through their process.
Okay.
Ultimately, they'll make their selection, it comes back to the select board for final vote of approval, and they're up and running. I know, Lance, you said you don't want to get into another issue, but if Jim does want to work part-time...
That's a different position.
No, he could conceivably come back and fill this position in the interim as this position.
Right, this is all
He can do up-
pertaining if it's okay with Jim and he wants to dive back in and...
Right, he can work
Yeah,
up
that
to
isn't-
690 hours while retired without it impacting his retirement, so...
Right.
Also, there's the cash equation.
Right, but he wouldn't hit that.
All right, but that's just so, because people
Right.
sometimes don't understand what we're talking, so.
Right.
So we could declare it vacant. He could stay on the books, but in a different capacity.
Conceivably, yeah.
It's while
While it's being advertised.
it's being
and
posted.
You find somebody,
Until,
Well, I can't say he's going to stay on the books, so
no,
we need to have
good.
that position filled
I mean,
anyway.
you kind of casually, you
Yes.
retreated from it a little bit, but since it's on the table,
it's just, that's an option for you, that's all.
Yeah.
we're not making that decision for you.
Right,
I'm just
absolutely,
making
yeah.
sure that if we talk about what, so that we don't do something wrong.
Mhm, Oh,
I'm just
absolutely.
we're not going to vote on that,
Yeah.
okay? Or tell you not to do something.
No, we're just throwing out some
making sure
information that
we-
was
the
discussed
information, that's
that
it.
you
That's all.
should probably know about.
So how would I refer to this particular position?
It'd be
It's a vacancy.
a motion to declare the existing, one of the existing 2 water tech positions in the water department as vacant.
That was what I was getting at, was
As
there
of-
there more than one.
12:31?
I move that the board declare one of the 2 water tech positions as vacant.
As of what date?
29,
As of the
12/29,
Sorry,
sorry.
just
of December.
Can I-
second that.
Okay.
Additional discussion?
Okay.
I will post it once you go through the process, but my question is, if, even though it's vacant in 12/29, if we find somebody earlier, are we allowed to bring them in earlier, or do we have to wait till after 12/29? Because I'm thinking of training.
You can bring it earlier, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, get it right out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Tomorrow morning.
If you think in a week you're going to find someone.
Well, I know that's kind of pie in the sky, but that's...
Come back.
Well, isn't it a two-week notice? Two-week advertisement, I think?
Yeah, so it's going
Yeah,
to be
there's
out
so
there
many,
anyway.
we've got a lot of, there's other stuff out there. All right, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
No opposed? Okay, the position vacant, and I presume that you'll be able to post that position. We'll get them filled, and now there's a couple other positions that we
The
need
second
to...
is, there's been an ongoing request now, I think this is the third fiscal year that it has been sought, been presented as part of the water department budget and approved at town meeting to have an additional water tech. Again, there was some discussion about, we touched on it a little bit earlier, of having it be a tech light, for lack of a better descriptor, if they didn't have all of their certifications in hand when they started, and then working up towards a full water tech. Obviously, if they come with all of their tickets, they come on right on as a tech. So prior meetings of select board, not this board, but prior configurations, the discussion was always that it wasn't deemed warranted because of the existing number of techs are the same as there were on staff when the workload was, if not greater, at least different, specifically in that the meter reading was a more manual process prior to having gone to the automated process. I won't speak to whether or not that's fully valid or not. On its face, it seems like something to at least talk about, but I would defer to the superintendent or members of the commission about the details of that.
Okay. Before we get into actual work description, well, about whether or not there's more to do or less to do, I think there's a couple other questions I have with allowing the position. One is, I mean, sometimes with unions, there's different rules that are in the contract as far as, like, the question about the process of hiring, but also if there's going to, are we allowed, is the agency allowed to hire under that, having a trainee with it in the, is there anything, any rules that the union would have?
It could be opened up, I'm sure, and change things if you wanted to.
I mean, I'm not representing the union in the
Right.
question. I'm just saying, is there a
Right.
union issue regarding bringing somebody in that's not fully qualified for a position?
No,
If I
just
could
have
say
to throw it
that.
on there as a trainee position.
Paul, is it 6 months, the current language, have to have the licenses within 6 months?
You
2
can't do-
years.
You can't.
If,
Yeah, you might not even be able to do it in 2 years, depending on the testing and the
If I may
class.
submit, we were talking about reasons why. If you want to make copies for the board, it's reasons why for the additional tech and the part-time office assistant. Those are the more notable reasons.
So
It'd be helpful to have that in advance to read.
Yeah.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know. Okay.
I just have a question here. As we always get this information ahead of time, it would be nice to have, but there's not enough for all four of us to review.
I can make copies of that, but I don't know if you're going to read it on the spot.
Okay, if
I'm not
Jim
gonna
wants to
have
make
time to
copies,
assess
I mean,
this,
I don't know that we can swallow it all right now, but,
Well, we're going to talk about this stuff anyway, right?
well,
We're talking about it and having time to study and get the facts, so, you know.
Well, it's been brought to you before, for the last three
Please
fiscal
forward it has in
years.
advance.
If
For the
it's-
chair, please.
well, I don't even know what's on,
Not
I don't
sure.
know if there's a recipe for cookies on the
Yeah.
paper that you just handed me, so I don't know what it
I'm
says.
not making any more.
You're not making any more cookies?
Easy.
I made it, I was joking about Sue's cookies.
You know, we've had several meetings and discussing the needs of the water department.
Right.
That's a lot of why we're here.
I- I know that.
We'll wait till Mr. Crowley comes back in, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, please.
Is this the same, is this an exact document of what you've given us already, or is this something?
Those reasons,
Whatever's on that paper, is it something new?
no, I haven't given the board
Oh,
those
this is new.
before. We've
Okay.
discussed many of them before in
Oh,
open
okay. Well,
discussion.
we'll just wait.
Was that the meeting I was calling?
No, within the last 3 years.
Yeah, we've been discussing it, but there's probably a lot more to add to that also.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Thank you.
Paul, are there things in this that have changed since the staffing traditionally has been at 2 techs? Are there additional things that have come on since then?
Yeah, and you have to forgive me, I walked out of the house without my glasses, so I can't see a thing.
Well, do you want me to-
You might
But,
want to clean them a little bit, but
One of the most notable ones on that list is, if you'll see in the list of operational requests, is, and this has come on, it was a definite benefit to the water department, to the water takers back in 2007 when we purchased all the assets of Timberley Park's water system and the 2 wells, which added significant more output, water production towards the system. However, it did increase our responsibilities for maintenance with 500 more services, 52 more hydrants, and with, yeah, I threw a number out, like 130 line gates, but when you figure at each intersection, there's at least 3 to 4 line gates to isolate sections if there's a problem. Not sounding like a lot, but this is part of state requirement for routine maintenance, is to exercise gates, maintain the hydrants for operational, make sure they're operable, no leakage, make sure they drain for the winter. All takes a significant amount of time. And just with our system, not adding 52 hydrants and over 100 plus gates. But I'm not saying that as a complaint. Overall, it was a benefit to the purchase, so. And a lot of the operational routine things. There's a lot of upkeep in updating records, improving inventory, controls, things of that nature, and to comply with state regulations. So there's just not enough time, and more towards a safety thing when we're performing water system repairs, excavation. It's getting to be, it's not a particularly safe environment when you only have 2 guys working on the job. I try to get out there when I can to assist, but my managerial duties and responsibilities are increasing, so that makes it difficult. And so when they're on the job, if additional material, supplies are needed, the job has to halt, because you can't leave a guy in the hole by themselves, and it poses a safety factor.
yeah, on the flushing end of it too, and the gate valve maintenance, I mean, I've been here for 20 years, and it's months and months of work between cleaning out the gates and getting on them, and flushing is broken up into 4 or 5 sections, and we're doing 2 a year. or 2 in the spring, 2 in the fall, trying to get to them. It's just a massive amount of work, because you keep running the hydrant until it's clean. You know, it's not a 10-minute flush or a 5-minute flush and everything's good. You wait, and there's a lot of old lines in town. I mean, 1934, we're getting on the 100-year replacement. You know, it's not too far away, 2034, everything's old.
So is it safe to say then that while you've operated for a number of years with just 2 techs,
We've always...
there is work that
Absolutely.
could have and should have been being done that you weren't able to get to because of the lack of the additional
Absolutely.
body?
Absolutely. There's a lot to do.
Question? Okay. I know especially this state is really good about new regulations, more regulations. Have regulations increased over the last year or 2 with you?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so that right there is a bump. All right, and can you talk a little bit about what kinds of things you're required to do now that you were not required to do before?
If I may, there's an increase in water quality monitoring.
Oh, yeah, that whole new...
Testing, everything.
Testing, we have to test for over 100 different contaminants throughout the year. And DEP, well, through the EPA, DEP is enforcing additional, they have a list of unregulated, which is a quite extensive list of unregulated contaminants they're constantly reviewing. And of those contaminants, depending on if, I mean, there can be detections in other systems, but they'll make those unregulated contaminants regulated, and that goes on a list. So, and when we're just monthly, doing our monthly routine sampling, I mean, that takes better part of a day to do, so.
Please do that before you
Oh,
do
absolutely.
anything else.
I mean, if you looked around at surrounding water departments, I think there's 2, or I think Shirley has 2 guys, but I think that's because the superintendent doesn't want to hire another one, but they're very well staffed and have people to do the stuff. And I know Groton's looking to go 3 people, I think, and they got a lot of stuff going on down there.
Madam Chair? If I could. In the sanitary survey that has gotten some discussion, there was a reference to, it actually reads, Mass DEP recommends the water supplier increase staffing to meet immediate operational needs and to provide for long-term succession planning. So obviously, Mass DEP is, the word they use there is recommends. Now, there's a staffing plan that we're required to be held to statutorily, right, for a water operator? DEP must have a staffing plan?
I couldn't tell.
Well, there's yeah, they're not dictating how many are to be staffed, but to perform the duties and make sure all these regulations are followed takes the required staff.
Yeah, but if the commissioners decided they get struck by lightning and they lose their minds and they decide to cut everybody except you, DEP would be in here the next day and say, you're not meeting your mandated
Absolutely.
minimum staffing.
Absolutely.
Because it'd be,
Yeah.
yeah.
But how do they determine what minimum staffing is? Is it one guy or 5?
The point I'm getting at is on the sanitary survey, it would have said require and not recommend.
Right.
If we weren't meeting minimum staffing. So from a DEP perspective, they may recommend, but if it was required by law, because we're not meeting the minimum threshold, they would have said, it would have been a non, and we would have notice of non-compliance on it if we were understaffed for what they believed we legally should have.
Well, again, there's no regulation saying you have to have X amount of employees on staff, but if you bring it up the sanitary survey, as I said, and Mike said, we can only using our flushing program, we can only flush half the system annually. That's what we have time for. DEP recommends, highly recommends, you flush the entire system annually. So,
Between all the other work. I mean, there's
flushing
work
takes,
orders you can look
flushing
at.
takes, Well, right now, doing half the system, it's a better part of a month in the spring, a month in the fall.
I mean, it's 2 or 3 hours a morning just for one guy or whatever, just to go around, do the basic into the stations, numbers, pumpage, chemical used, pH, get it all in the computer. It's, you know, it's just, there is a lot to do. I suppose there could be further discussion on it.
The way I feel, if I may, this is our water.
Absolutely.
This is our water, all right? From my perspective, the Board of Commissioners have asked for this position for the last 2 years. I'm not going to second guess the people who work with something all the time. These are our experts. They are the ones that deserve the right to say, you know what, guys, we need more help. And if I were to second guess them, I would have to second guess every other position that my professionals come to me with. And that's not my job. That's not my job. That's why we ask other people, that other professionals, to do that job. So I don't have any problem whatsoever with going forward and saying, yes, go ahead, hire a second person, especially because, how long have you been here?
37 years.
How long have you been here?
20.
Yeah. You talk about succession planning?
Well, it's like it's
You know,
too, you know.
Please just don't retire
Yeah.
right away.
Well, I got 10, and
Okay?
I don't know when Paul's
But what
going.
I'm getting at is, you know, we've got to start thinking about
Absolutely.
long-term. You know, and you don't know if you're going to find somebody off the street that's totally qualified. Chances are you're not. We don't pay a lot
Correct.
compared to other communities. So you're talking about someone who's going to come in and be a trainee probably. And that's going to take some time and learning and advancing.
Absolutely.
So it's just not good, it's not good planning, I don't think, to say no to this. And things have changed, and I know that the EPA has pushed a lot of stuff that's ending up pushing on the water stuff, too. We made some big deals about it in the news last year, year before. Even just your monitoring of the levels of the water is different than it was 3 years ago.
Constant
So,
increase in regulations.
Thank you,
which
Massachusetts.
Rightfully so.
Putting more regulations.
I do have another
but-
question about this page. There's 14 items. Are these in the job description for the water tech? Are these taken from the job description?
Some of them. I have the copies of the job descriptions, if you don't have them.
Apologize that you weren't sent the info.
Apologize, I stapled them if you want copies of them, but they're on the, I don't think they're on the website, but they're they come from the comp and class plan that was done in 2012.
The trainee one was?
The trainee one was looked at and reviewed by HRS in 2015, I think.
Madam Chair, I don't think it's enough for us, but here you go.
Thank you. I mean, not my job to look at your descriptions, and if those need to change, obviously, I'd expect that you guys would.
And then
Yes.
my next
Raise
question
that.
is,
We did review.
are we authorized, are we in a position to even do this?
Nice review.
There's a lawsuit somewhere
never went over
between
that
the
stuff.
water commissioners and us about who has the authority to, are we like gonna put that off, is that off the table now, that we're,
Well, you would think that
if we're gonna
as
hire?
adults, we can have a discussion, I would think.
Well, that would be
Great.
the assumption, but
Yeah.
if we have a court date coming to decide who has the authority to do this, I don't think that we have the authority to do this.
We were
But-
instructed by the town administrator to
Okay.
come before you with this.
Okay,
Well,
but that's my, I mean, it's just a question, can we hire?
I-
Can we make these decisions, are they valid?
Right now, if you look at all of the documents available to us, the charter, the statutory setup for the Board of Water Commissioners, the personnel policies, it would have the commissioners making a recommendation to you, and as the personnel, the legal entity that makes personnel decisions, you would either take the recommendation or not. If you take it, you would authorize the action. So we have the ability to do that, even though there is pending litigation that's kind of hovering above us. That litigation may determine it's a different process, but as of today, this is the process.
So this is a
we have.
process that we're stating that we
Correct,
would have
Correct.
regardless? Okay.
correct.
Okay. So we can take this information and make a decision and,
Yeah.
all right.
Is it, if I may, was it 2 years or 3 years you've had this budget?
3 years.
So,
Been approved at town meeting.
And what, so 3 years?
so I'm just wondering, because I know of discussions for the 2 years, but I wasn't aware of the discussion prior to my,
No, were you on the board then?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I remember that.
How was that vote when you were on?
Oh,
You were
I
the
don't
chair
remember.
with-
I don't remember that. I don't remember that.
well, it wouldn't have been approved.
It wasn't approved, so if they asked you, you
The
denied it.
budget, it was budgeted and approved at town meeting.
But the Board of Selectmen did not approve.
No, no.
Yeah, I don't think it ever got that far.
It didn't get that far.
Didn't get that far.
It didn't get that far. It was
don't remember why?
approved, but it never, I don't think you guys ever came back to the board.
We made several, the first time was, the reason was the union started, and this board couldn't discuss anything because of the initiation of the supervisory union. However, this
Well,
discussion,
that was not 3 years ago.
That was 2 years ago.
That was 2
The
years
year
ago.
before,
3
it
years ago.
was when Andy was still the administrator, and I think that some of the notes that I've seen Paul talk about.
I know it's 3 years, so
Would have been
I don't
Sue,
exactly
Carolyn,
remember.
and Colin were on the board then.
I mean, there's been a communication gap between the water commissioners and the selectmen. We all know that, so we're just trying to,
Well, that's what I'm trying to get the history, like,
Yes.
what
So that
happened.
goes,
when
Madam Chairman?
Sue was the
Should be a little
chair
more
of the
communication.
board, Colin was on the board.
I
and
don't, I
Carolyn was on the
honestly
board. I'm
don't
just trying to figure
remember.
out
I
what-
just
I
remember
don't
we've
remember
been
that.
talking about this forever.
Okay.
You know, and I will give you, I will give past discussions some credibility in terms of, well, you know what, we just did away with the manual meter reading, so why now? Well, yeah, but that's 2 years ago or 3 years ago, all right, that we started doing that. So it's beyond rehashing at this point. And as I said, our professionals and the people that we entrust through the election to do due diligence to our water safety are saying it again. It doesn't do any good to rehash the past.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Because you brought up the issue of litigation, in litigation, the position that the select board, the town proper, is taking is that operational matters that are driven by policy, like staffing, vest with the commissioners.
Okay.
Technically, because of the way our documents read here, they then make that decision and come to you. So if we're being consistent with the position we're taking, we would not question their judgment
Okay.
on the need for this position. And again, I don't know what historically the arguments were or weren't. I think it's healthy to have the discussion about what's the workload like, have the regulations changed, what's the likelihood that you're going to get somebody that's got the tickets. I mean, those things are all fair game in this discussion, so you can kind of poke at the commissioners enough to get a sense for why they came to their decision. But ultimately, to go to what Sue said, they're the subject matter experts on the matter. They control the policy for, the entire water operation, so. So, and then I trail off.
Okay.
If I may. Um, We've budgeted for this for 3 years, knowing the age, myself and Jim were approaching the age to retire, which was, again, why we started this process. Not being able to act on it has put the department in a very precarious position right now, because if a water tech is not hired that already has the licenses, on-call personnel need to be licensed. So the burden of that falls on Mike and myself now. That's a lot to ask. That's a big responsibility, and a lot out of your personal life. You have to be available 24/7 for any type of emergency. Right now, and not to get into other issues, but, I'm doing this all now without pay, which I was afforded many years, so
You're not getting paid?
not for on-call.
That's for a different, so
Did you get an $8,000 increase, which included in your job description, sir, for that?
Excuse me?
let's not,
All right,
we're not here to
I'd
talk.
like to-
We're
If
not
I
here to
can
talk about
hold on
on-call.
to,
Point of
We
order.
can
Yeah, I'm
go there.
if we can just stop right there. Um,
Madam Chairman, I have a
You're-
couple of things here.
Well, as long as it doesn't have to do with
Absolutely.
Mr. Rafuse's paycheck.
He's the one that brought it up?
But I'd like to stop it right there, because
Absolutely.
we could really
Thank you.
make this a messy thing, and I'd rather not.
Absolutely.
That's not what we came here to talk about. We came here to talk about
It's true.
hiring positions, and not something that we've already discussed. I'd like to, well, when we go to vote on these in a minute, but I'd like to talk about the office assistant. And,
What, can we just do these separately?
Yes.
well, I'd like to, let's talk about both of them, and then if we can.
Well, I would like to, if it's
You have
already...
something? Okay, never mind. Do you have something about?
Well, I'm getting confused here, is that
Okay.
we already approved replacing the retiring person.
Right.
Is that, just so we're on the same
Correct.
page here? Gets a little confusing, to stay focused. The second thing we're now talking about is adding additional water tank.
Correct.
So that would be the first page of the document we just got tonight.
Correct.
Is that correct? And you got documents on job descriptions and
Yes.
postings, which none of us have, okay? So, Mr. Rafuse brought up a couple things here. Well, actually, Mike brought up a very good point about communication problem. And I just want to make it crystal clear that it hasn't been with this board or last board, that this, I remember when I used to watch on TV, Selectman quite a lot of Bob Plowman, actually, I remember in one of his things said that the only department that constantly had problems with was the water department. So the communication's gone well past this. I hope we can solve this. No, it isn't a point of order. Mike brought up there's been a
Right.
communication problem, and I'm just
A
saying...
slight communication
And
problem, and
I'm saying to you that you're correct in that, but it goes way past these boards. Am I correct?
I
in that?
didn't mention any boards.
I'm mentioning that you
That's
brought it
fine.
up, and so that's fine.
I'm just saying
The next
that
thing
communication-
is that you brought up about the need to do regulations, and at the board, when I was the chairman, we'd asked that when it's convenient that you could come to us and talk to us about the notification we had about from the state about regulations. And then the other is the inventory control. I would love to have, if the chairman wants to schedule it, I tried when I was the chairman to come in and talk to us about the audit and how you're working on that stuff. And then going forward now, I had mentioned to Mr. Rafuse at the last meeting that we take the stuff you bring for us very serious here, because we know everyone's trying to do a good job. But to get documents of the reasons why you want this staff during a meeting and get this is just not acceptable. And the past practice is that we had contractors put in the town of liability before contracts were signed on property. And I told you last
It's have nothing to do with the
time, it's about us not having the
No, no.
documents here. Who's running this, chairperson?
Yes,
Please.
right now, hold on. Gordy is talking, and he's the only one that should be talking until I tell him not to.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for the respect. So the only thing I'm saying is that I don't see how I can make a decision tonight where I've just been given documents to consider this seriously to give it the time and for the taxpayers, both water takers and the taxpayers, we'll give them the reasons why in the middle of a meeting. So I would ask that this be put on. And then the last thing that was brought up was about litigation. And we're in a no man's zone now because the town is being sued by the water commissioners. And I'm going to tell you, I don't know whether the courts will favor the town's position or yours position. But I will tell you this, if the town prevails, I will be asking that the town's costs be taken out of
I
your
don't think
budget.
it should
Point
be
of order,
part
point of order.
litigation.
Hold on, one at a time,
Thank you,
please.
Madam Chairman. I only bring up subjects that were brought up by these gentlemen here. Thank you very much.
We didn't bring up litigation.
Okay, hold on,
No,
one
we
at a
did
time,
it.
We
one at
did.
a
I don't know
time,
where you heard that.
one at a time, just, he spoke, but that doesn't
Right.
mean we all have to jump in. We don't have to even follow the conversation that he started.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
We can, that's just what he wanted to say. But we are here to discuss these two positions. Does anyone have anything more to say about the water technician additional position?
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve the posting of the additional water tech position for the water department.
Madam Chair, actually, you could declare vacant.
Declare vacant and post for.
Legally, that's the language that has to be in.
Even though it's another additional position. Okay, thank you for that clarification. Sorry to interrupt you, Suzanne.
All right, is there a second?
No, there isn't.
I'd like to just pause on that, and I did want us to talk about the office assistant before we get to the final motion, so she has a motion, and I'd like to just leave it hanging.
No, it's not a motion if it's not seconded.
Right, exactly, but I do want to return to that. But talk about the office assistant. Now, you had, is this a refilling of the position that used to be there?
No.
Is this a different position?
May I speak?
Yes.
Okay, so Brenda needs help with the office position. There's lots of paperwork and computer work to do, plus she is presently in poor health, and she needs to have an operation or operations completed. There'll be no one to fulfill the office tasks that need to be done if she's out on medical leave. So with the increasing reporting that we have to do, a part-time office assistant is important to aid in those functions and to fill in for Brenda when she is out on medical leave.
Okay, how many hours does Brenda work?
40.
40. And you want to bring in a part-time
Yeah, I
office
think
assistant?
it's 19 hours or less.
So you want a 19-hour. Now, there was somebody in that position up until what? Here we are, 2 or 3 years ago?
That I don't know.
That was a temporary billing clerk position,
Okay.
and I want to say that was ended, or the position was eliminated in, was it
2012.
2012? Thereabouts?
Excuse me, 2015.
15.
15.
It's June of 15.
But this position will be a different position.
Job description would be different.
It is a completely different position.
Slightly different.
Okay. Slightly different. How many hours was that position? Do you
Which
remember?
Was the one
The
before?
old position.
20.
That was a 20, okay.
Madam Chairman, I'm sorry, could I just
Okay,
give you some,
yeah.
I believe it was a 30-hour position. I have documentation that it might have been a 30-hour position from a former chairman of the, not chairman, a member, a commissioner of the Water Commission, said it was a 30-hour position.
That was a 30 hours.
No, I'm sorry, I correct myself again.
I don't think it was.
It grew to two, it was additionally the funding of a 20-hour position, so it was a 20-hour.
Okay. All right. And,
This raises, Madam Chair.
yes.
And this raises another union contract issue, perhaps, which is recall rights. If you look at the highway and water department union contract that covers the administrative positions in the water department, there is language, which when I went looking for the language on posting and declaring a vacancy, right next to it is the language on recall, and it says if there's an employee who's been laid off, they shall have the right to fill the vacancy in the classification from which he or she was laid off, or vacancies in a lower paying classification if she's qualified to fill during a 3-year calendar period. So have you guys thought of that at all? That you actually have an employee who was laid off from the department that would be
She
qualified?
wasn't laid off.
Actually, that's what the letter says, that you wrote her.
I don't believe,
Yeah, I would have to see
I don't
all
believe
that
that.
stuff.
She wasn't laid off, the position was eliminated.
That would be a layoff.
That's
That is a layoff.
That's a layoff. That's a reduction of force. A position is no longer needed. It's a reduction of force, depending on what your agency calls it, but that's a layoff.
I can tell you the letter that, when I've read the file, the letter that was affixed to the employee's door at your signature was a layoff notice. The word layoff notice was used.
I'd have to review the document.
So do we, would that need to be reviewed prior to, because would we have to go through that process prior to declaring a vacancy? If we were to consider hiring or filling this position?
Well, the language says that they would have the right to fill vacancy.
Oh, okay.
So there would need
Who
to
has
first be a...
I'm sorry, who has the right?
The employee that was
Person
laid
that was
off?
laid
It was
off.
a prior employee that was laid off from the department. So it does say to fill vacancy, so there would first need to have been a vacancy. So if the Board of Water Commissioners is asking the Board of Selectmen to declare a vacancy in the position of part-time office assistant, and that request is met, and you declare a vacancy, this language would then require that the laid-off person be given recall rights.
So they'd have to receive a notice
Right.
prior to the posting or as part of the posting?
Well, it says, each employee who's laid off under the provisions of the collective bargaining agreement shall have the right to fill vacancies in the classification for which he or she was laid off, and/or vacancies in lower paying classifications for which he or she is qualified to fill, which occur within the bargaining unit during the period 3 calendar years following the date on which he or she was laid off, subject to the following limitations. Recall rights exercised in inverse order of layoff, but there's only one layoff. No employee may exercise recall rights if said exercise will result in promotion to a rank or pay classification higher than that from which he or she was laid off. Any employee laid off for a period of more than 6 calendar months may be required by the town to pass a physical examination given by a doctor selected by the town at the town's expense. Each employee shall be required to notify, shall be required to be given notice, certified mail by the Board of Selectmen, and if they fail to respond to the offer of recall within 2 weeks of the date of the mailing of the recall notice, they shall be deemed to have refused the vacancy. In the event of an actual or constructive refusal, the vacancy will then be offered to the next employee on the recall list. In this case, there is no one else. In the event there are no employees on the recall list who accept a vacancy, the Board of Selectmen may hire a new employee.
I have a question. When, Lance, I think it was you that was talking, explaining that Brenda has need to perhaps go out for a while, which, we totally understand. But when I was doing management work, and I'm not questioning your decision, but I'm asking for you to maybe look at it a little differently. When I was in a management position and we knew that there was going to be some kind of situation where we were going to be shorthanded, we tended not to fill that with a permanent position, creating a permanent position to take care of a temporary situation. So I guess my question to you and to your board is that one of those situations? Because if it is, then there are other ways to fill something that's a temporary position to get you over that hump, whether it's hiring a temp that you could have come in and learn the job and fill in when your full-time person isn't there. That's different than saying, I need a permanent part-time position.
That's a valid point, so thank you. Makes sense.
I guess I'm a little confused. It doesn't say on the sheet of paper you have running a temporary position.
No, I think Sue is
she's-
talking
No, what
about.
I'm
Talk about best
suggesting,
practices.
You
What I'm
you mentioned,
suggesting-
which I think we should be very careful that we're in open session and we're talking about the health of an employee, which we probably shouldn't be talking about. But I think it was mentioned that, I think Lance mentioned it, that we may need, there's some backfill hours that may be needed, which I take as a separate conversation. I think Sue is talking about, so we're not talking about this position specifically, that if you have a need for somebody that may be out for extended periods of time, they could be going on a cruise, or out just taking a leave of absence for whatever reason, and you wanted to temporarily fill those hours because of an absence for whatever reason, then hiring a temp position, person, not a temporary position, but somebody that can, but you're not changing really the budget line item, let's say. You're still on that same, or you are, but because that person's still using different time. But it's a
Yeah,
different
I-
position. We're not talking about this position, which Sue is trying to solve a problem that has different connotations than a recall.
Well, there's the short-term and long-term requirements of the water department. That, short-term, a contract employee or a temporary employee would probably suffice. But long-term, we would have to look at that, and maybe we should discuss this at a water commission meeting about long-term.
It's just a suggestion, because I think you have an immediate concern. And that immediate concern, I'm assuming, is a temporary situation, okay? So it's kind of like, well, that's the priority, let's handle that. And how might we handle that?
But I think,
But to create, to assume that that is going to continue, I'm not sure. I'm just not sure.
If I can go, and I think this is an actual, you are asking to hire an additional position in the office regardless. I mean, you added that stuff about
Yes.
the other employee, but even if you had not mentioned that, maybe you shouldn't have, but you did. But just, you separately, you'd like to hire an additional part-time office assistant in that office regardless of the other matters. Is that, can I?
I'm a little
assume
confused
that?
here.
You want to hire another person in there regardless of what the other person's doing.
With Brenda.
Right,
Yes.
regardless of Brenda.
2 people in the office.
You want 2 people in the office? That's what you're, okay.
1 part-time and Brenda full-time.
And Brenda full-time, okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
with your permission, just for some clarification for me so I can understand
Okay.
things. First of all, Sue, I really follow your train of thought there, and I think that's,
Once in a
thank you
while.
for that. No, I didn't mean like, I meant that.
I know.
For what it's meant is, but
Thank
that's
you.
the best practice, and
Yes.
I have to agree that would be a solution. But I have a question about short time. Now, do you folks have hired a consultant there working with Brenda too? That we have no input over? You have someone on the payroll, there's a consultant working in the
Yes.
office too?
Yes,
So you have additional hours now, just as a consultant pay, but not as an employee, right?
Right.
So there
She's
is
only
additional
a s-
staff there now, right?
her duties are limited.
And what's her hourly rate as a consultant?
I'd have to look that up.
You don't know that?
I don't know that.
She
offhand.
directly answer you, Mr. Rayfuse?
Yeah, she does.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Can we find out that amount when we have a chance, someone, please?
How many hours does she work, Paul, do you know?
19.
So she's doing 19 currently.
So she's
Some-
no benefits,
some weeks
just a
less.
consultant?
So are you gonna, is that person going to be gone? Is that, or is that person also going to be there in addition to this person?
Hopefully, she'll be there for a while. I can't
Okay, so
say.
you want to have a 19-hour consultant that you're just paying as a consultant?
Well, she's currently retired, so she can only work 19 hours.
But she's still
No, but
paid as
you
a
have
consultant.
staffing already that's 19 hours
But,
plus
yeah, but not,
working in the
not for
office.
the length that we're looking for. Right
Well, you
now,
said
we're-
you hope that she's going to stay.
well,
you just said
Yeah,
that.
but I have to come to, if she's going to stay, I have to come before the board here and post the position.
So
I'm
you
gonna
want
make it
2
permanent.
additional positions?
No.
So you want to, so what I'm asking you is if you hire this position, that consultant is going to stay also, or leave?
No.
Oh, so you want the consultant to go?
Well, we'd like the person.
No, I'm not, I'm not talking about, I'm trying to keep names out of this.
No,
because that's
no,
not what
no,
we're talking,
no,
we're talking about
yeah,
position.
yeah,
You want
right.
that
It would just
consultant.
be a
No, I
part-time-
don't mean you want to get rid of the
No, I know,
consultant. I
I
didn't
know.
say it that way.
No.
You just want the consultant position, which is not really a position.
Right, it's just a contract employee
Right.
right now.
That you want that position to go away, the position, not the person. That person can apply for this job for all I care, but if, you want
Well-
that consultant is not going to be there and
No, no.
okay, you want the consultant position to stop, which I'm assuming, only because just the term consultant usually means they're getting paid more than this.
No, it's,
Well, I can't, the
It might save
consultant,
you money to hire somebody as opposed to keeping the consultant on. Am I right?
well, that's what we want to hire somebody.
Okay, all right,
Then they can do the full capacity of the work. The
okay,
consultant right now is only doing part of the job because she's a consultant.
okay,
she's a contractor, really.
Right.
It's not a consultant.
Right.
okay.
And if I may, Madam Chair,
Yes,
we did, speaking to Sue's point, we did look into a temp agency, and actually it was going to cost more. The temp agency hourly rate plus additional fees that would have had to been paid was actually going to cost the department more.
and when I'm thinking about this position, I want to try to get away from looking at the other employee. Like to fill, because if you either want another employee in there or you don't. And that, I'm thinking of that completely separate from any other employee that's in there. The only concern I had is like, okay, now we're gonna add, it didn't make sense to have the consultant and this.
No, no,
No.
no,
But
no.
we settled that. But whatever Brenda's gonna do, I'm trying to keep that out of the conversation
understand.
about this position. Temp agencies or any other agencies, you're asking us to agree for you to hire another a part-time office assistant for 19 hours. And I want to try to stay in that box as much as I possibly can without getting into all the other stuff.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
if it's all right with Sue, I don't mean to step ahead of her, but if I make a recommendation,
yes.
and it's up to you two, I would like to see us put this off to the next meeting with the thing that complete packages, and I actually have some stuff which I would present from earlier things that me and Mr. Crowley did on the DP to exploratory, some facts for consideration, but that a complete package of everything is given to us a week before the next meeting, so we can give it the time and diligence. And you're in charge of scheduling, but I wouldn't be opposed to bringing them back at the next meeting. But we don't have the facts here, and there's more things coming out. There's consultants, there's this is that. I would like time to give them a chair to present whatever their case is. In a time, but at least 3 or 4 days before our next meeting, so we can at least know what we're talking about. I don't know what we're talking about here. So that's up to you two thoughts,
What do you
but I would
think,
like to address it, but I like to address it when I have all information, please.
I kind of had another question, if I may, because if we are going to say, let's hold off on this tonight, and the water commissioners can go back and huddle and present us with, something more concrete based on our questions.
On which position are we talking about?
Okay, well, see, that, it just adds to the complexity, okay? If you have a contractor today, and what I'm hearing Paul say is this contractor is fulfilling certain duties, but not all of the duties, similar to training this consultant to do Brenda's job were she not to be there for a period of time. I guess my question is, and you don't have to answer it now, but my question would be, well, if you're hiring a consultant and you have a consultant working there for the 19 hours, why wouldn't you continue to use that consultant in the capacity in which you're talking about this new position? Okay? I mean, I have a problem with hearing short-term issue with a solution that's a permanent solution. okay? That, it just philosophically and from a management standpoint, and not second-guessing you on the water stuff, but on that, it's just not good practice to fill, to do something permanent when you've got a bubble. It's like handle the bubble, get it over with, and then see where you're at.
Absolutely.
If I may, probably consultant is the wrong word. It's
The
contractor. We contracted this person because ultimately we wanted to hire a part-time, permanent person. And this contractor realizes, for the most part, that she's not gonna be there. She'd like a commitment, obviously, for a permanent, part-time job. But, so for that matter, it doesn't behoove us to go through the whole training process of a complicated billing program to teach her that, and then she not be there. If we have to go and hire somebody, I mean, you're not gonna
Wait,
have
why
a
don't we do-
contractor on permanently.
Why don't we do this? We're, I
I'm gonna
think
go
we're,
with Gordy on,
yeah, and that's what I'm gonna suggest, is that we have you come back at our next scheduled meeting, but we've got, because we don't even have, all of us don't have the same copies of everything. I was hoping that we could dig through the mire and get to it, but I think that there's just a lot here, and we keep adding to it, that if we can have between somebody and Jim to come up with a packet for each of us that has these job descriptions, even if you want to redo the reasons for additional operational staff that you did, if you need to tweak that, that's fine. But, and then an actual staffing plan that has what is it that you want this office assistant to do, and where does this contracted person, consultant come into it, and what your plan is as far as disposing of that position, moving that, what is it that person's been doing that you need, we're going to make some changes here. I think we can get through it easily if we have all the...
Easier, absolutely.
Easier.
Yes.
If we have more of the documentation, and I'm not trying to make it harder, I'm really not, but I think that they're both making a good point, that we're really, we're going to be here for another hour, and finding little tidbits to talk about, and I don't want to do that to any of us.
but I have one other thing. I have one other thing, please.
Yes, yeah.
I'm not interested in reading a whole bunch of stuff.
Right.
Personally, okay? I'm not at that detail level. That's for you guys to figure out. However, my perception, listening to you, is that you, as a commission, need to get back together and hash this out. I'm more interested in hearing what the outcome of that hashing out is going to be. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, give me bullets. Okay, that you met, you discussed this, you separated that, you analyzed the situation, and here are the results. And it could be the same recommendation or a new one, it doesn't matter. But I'm not going to second guess your job descriptions and stuff like that. I'm at a higher level that I'm looking at it, okay? But I think you need time to talk.
And I think we all need to, you have to get a motion and a second, and
Well-
but I'm just, we need consistency, we need all the, whether Sue wants bullets or one of us, Gordy says he's got some stuff he wants to give us, and then there's the stuff that we have tonight that I don't have copies to give everybody, so we would like everything in one package, but it sounds like you don't have it either, that you're not all on the same page on what it is you're asking for, because there's just little tidbits.
Well,
Come up
there's
with
two
one-
positions,
One,
though.
but we keep adding little tidbits on why you need different positions and who's on first over there. And I'm not, come on, you have another meeting or something between now and our next meeting, which is probably going to be in 2 weeks, and have it nice and
So is it
clear. So we're
just
not
the-
here for an hour and a half.
Is it just the office assistant we can't post, or,
Madam Chair,
we're going to post we already I think we already voted on the position.
Existing tech.
The first one.
The retiring,
The retiring position.
just to
But-
keep it clear so we all
but-
understand.
And I
There
think
was
we
a-
can,
Right, there was a motion on the table from Sue about the
and
second.
nobody seconded it.
Right, I
And
understand.
if I were
And I
to
think we're
make
gonna
that
leave it there.
motion again, it's a separate position, which is why I had a problem with going right into the administration one. They're two entirely
Two
different
totally different things.
situations.
But
We
we
have
did
the
that.
information on this, on the additional water tech.
But there's no second.
People,
So
So let me get this clear.
let's just,
that's just not
Let me ask a question.
necessary.
So right now, you're only doing the replacement of the current water tank. For whatever reason, you don't want to vote on the second water tank.
let's meet on our next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me just ask you another question. You know, we've been trying for I don't know how many meetings to get on your agenda. And this has been dragging for months. So to put it off another 2-3 weeks is, really, time is of the essence to us.
Okay, let me just say.
2 weeks isn't
What
bad.
we got in our meeting is the only thing in our packet for tonight is a letter dated November 13th.
But Paul's been communicating with Mr. Kryler.
But we don't
for
have
months.
anything. You came in here, all right, I just want to end it and say, we're going to meet at our next meeting, and I've asked
Yes.
for a consistent packet that all of us get. And we'll, hopefully, my goal would be to finalize next time. We're not going to,
Absolutely.
I don't want to drag, I don't
we'll
want to
have-
drag this
we'll have
on, and
to-
I mean that sincerely.
We
We'll have a
have somebody
discussion,
that's
yeah.
retiring as of next
We
week.
already
That's all
voted
right,
on
took care of
that.
that. That's a done deal, Sue.
It's already voted on.
That's a done deal.
And we know that we need somebody,
We did, we just,
but we
We're
know,
posting it.
but we know we need someone else
okay.
in order to have some continuity in terms of
All right, let's move on to the next item on the agenda.
Madam Chair, if I could
Yes.
just beg your indulgence on one thing, because Lance made a point, and I just want to close the loop. Paul and I have been communicating for more than months on this issue. Upon the advice of counsel,
Okay,
because of pending litigation, we were advised to not engage in this discussion. Because you asked me to find a way to have this discussion.
Appreciate
I
it.
went back to counsel and said, is there a way without jeopardizing their position or our position to get in the room? And he said, see if they will say, and Nate and I talked about this, see if they will say, the filling of this position represents a public health
Right.
emergency.
right.
Nate wrote the letter, we scheduled a meeting. So it's not, it could have been left hanging with Lance's statement that efforts have been made by Mr. Rayfuse to get together and you've been ignoring it. That's not the case, and I wanted the public to understand that.
Madam Chairman?
I would just,
I know you want to move forward, but just one clarification, not for these folks, but Mr. Crowley answers to the three of us, and so through you to Sue. I would like the board to give some instructions to Mr. Kryler when we come back in 2 weeks to talk about this. I think there was at least 5 things about collective bargaining, so he could work on any of those concerns to have that ready for us too. You understand what I'm trying to say, this, Sue and Cindy?
yeah, and
Just so that he knows that
But
from
but I
him we
think-
need that.
I think things need to be split out distinctly, that they are two different positions with
I'll go with
two
that.
different
Yeah, I don't have a problem with
questions, with a different set of questions and a different set of criteria
think you're
for
100%
why
right.
they need it, okay?
But on the other hand, for those two distinctive things, we need to know, because I counted at
Yes.
least 5 things that are our responsibility, the three of us, for collective bargaining, unless the courts change that. Am I correct, Mr. Crowley?
That's fair.
All right.
And the last thing, Madam Chair, is consistent with the board's position of deference to the policy decisions of the water commissioners. You can't, in good faith, show that deference if you don't have the information upon which you've made that judgment.
Thank you.
So, because you've received it this evening, in a great deal of detail, and I thank Paul for that, it's a great deal of detail to look at, but you can't fully understand all the needs because you've just gotten the information. So I don't think anything is gone awry in terms of the
No.
respective parties' positions here.
Right, and I just, and I really, I want to have an up or down vote, make it, and close it at our next meeting. So I'd like if what he asked, if we give directions to the town administrator to make sure that we have a full packet on everything that we would need to make those decisions. If there's things that I haven't mentioned or that we haven't asked for, or that you think maybe the water commissioners should provide us, if you can make sure that they do, ask them for that, whatever you think of. And if you guys have one packet, come with, I don't want to accuse you of not being able to communicate with each other, but if you cannot, you'll come as in a united front to say this is, and don't add all this stuff. We'll just, this is what we need, this is what we're asking for. And I don't want to sit here for an hour and try to justify it or justify again. I don't want to do this again.
So that
I want to
way,
have everything together.
Is Mr. Clark going to provide us the information that he's speaking of in order
We
to
can make sure that happens.
provide that courtesy?
We can with.
Through the chair.
Through the administrator, we can make
Yes,
sure.
but through
that-
the chair,
Certainly.
any public records that I would make part of a
Right.
packet would be a
If we could
public
do that.
record, and everyone would be entitled
But
to
if we could, if.
So
but
I don't have
I
any
think you have a
They'll
good,
provide it.
but Lance has a
As a
good.
board, we're not addressing
Oh,
anyone out
okay,
there,
but
please.
I think Lance does make a good point, that if we have information
Positively.
regarding this decision, that
Will
we
be
can
part
make
of the
sure Jim
packet.
gets it to you
Absolutely.
prior to
Thank
the
you.
meeting. If we can.
Appreciate it.
Because I do
Respect
want
that moment.
to, I don't want to spend an hour and a half on it next
Thank you.
time. I want to, maybe 20 minutes.
I think you want to
Absolutely.
try
And
to
that's
move
mostly
to
motions.
3.1
Okay?
about a half hour
Can
ago,
we,
Madam
is
Chair.
that,
Yeah.
okay, I really mean that.
I'm gonna adjourn the meeting now. I move that we adjourn the Water Commissioners meeting here at 272 Main Street in the Selectmen's Chambers in the Town Hall at 7:45.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
All right.
Aye.
And thank you for
Unanimous.
coming.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
Meeting's adjourned at 7:46.
it. Take care.
Have a nice night, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas to you, by the way.
Yes, you too.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Night, Mike.
I don't know.
Take care.
Good night.
Okay, so
3.1.
we have a number of appointments.
Do you want me to just,
Yes.
Yes.
Madam Chairman, can I say it's 7:45, we all agreed again?
Write that down. Make sure that's in the minutes.
Yes.
We agreed on something.
okay, I move that the board appoint Trish DeRemus, and that is not spelled correctly on the agenda.
Oh.
It should be DOREMUS. To the Community Strategy Development Committee effective December 12th, 2017.
Second.
Second, I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye. Next.
Yeah, but who's rushing me?
It's Christmas.
I move that the board appoint Christopher Groton to the Townsend Fire EMS Department as an on-call firefighter effective December 12th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018. Is December 12th the right date that we should be using there? That was written
Yeah, I would
for
do the
last-
20th, yeah.
The 20th.
So they should all be the 20th.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change that to, say, December 20th to June 30th, 2018, with a 9-month probationary period.
I have a point of order here. I'm trying to clarify, so with indulgence, please.
Yep.
Yeah, I believe we did change the fire contract to a year probation, and I know these aren't contract employees,
Should
but
be
for consistency within the department.
Okay, so that's, I'm changing that to a 12-month probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Next.
Gordy and I are doing our best.
Yes, we are. And Mr. Crowell helped us straighten that out, so thank you.
I would like to go back to 3.1 for clarification and make an amendment to December 20th.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. So do it.
Aye.
3.3.
Move to appoint Jameson Mayhew to the Townsend Fire EMS Department as a per diem firefighter paramedic effective December 20th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, with a 12-month probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that the board appoint Richard Bennett to the Townsend Fire EMS Department as a per diem firefighter paramedic effective December 20th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, with a 12-month probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I move that the board appoint Brenton Bourne to the Townsend Fire EMS Department as a per diem firefighter paramedic effective December 20th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, with a 12-month probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I just want to make, not to be funny, but June 30th is less than 12 months.
I
Appointed
move
him
that
for
we
6
change
months.
all of the dates so that they're consistent with 12 months.
Second. All in favor?
Okay, next, just move on. We'll just,
Give me the date.
no, we're only pointing.
I'm not
we're
doing another
pointing-
one unless
it's
I have the
true.
right date.
No, it is true. It's still true, because it's still a 12-month probationary period.
Yes.
Right.
Regardless. Right now, we're only appointing until the end of
So
the
they're
fiscal.
on probation longer than they're going to be appointed
Right,
for.
but
They'll be
presumably, if
reappointed
if they
on
survive,
probation,
if
which
they
is-
survive this board.
which is common practice.
We're gonna reappoint them in,
Right,
for
correct.
July 1st anyway, so I just
Two
thought,
separate
since we were
entities.
making fun of you about jokes, or
Yes.
dates and things, I thought I would throw that out there.
Yes.
It's a good job.
But okay, so 3.6? You didn't bring the cookies, it's the.
No, I know, it's my fault. I move that the board appoint Chief Richard Bailey and Chief Mark Boynton to the Neshoba Valley Regional Dispatch Admin Board as alternate members.
Madam Chairman, would you like the second now or after discussion?
We'll do a second, and then we
Second.
can discuss.
Second. Okay. So we have any discussion?
I do, I have a
There you
question.
go.
Does this in any way compromise what we need to get done for the dispatch?
Helps it. Just in
Okay,
terms of flexibility, if I'm not able to attend an admin board, one of the chiefs can sit in my stead.
okay.
I thought they were already on it.
They're on the operational board, so there's the admin board, then the ops board.
Okay.
Okay.
Madam Chairman.
And you're
Yes.
willing to do
Wait,
this?
Sue's still talking.
You're willing to do this? Okay, thank you.
Is Mark shaking his
Chief
head?
Chief Boynton's been hijacked.
Yeah, no, he's
Anyways.
going like this. He's pointing at you.
Madam Chairman, to Chief Bailey, Chief Boynton, and to Mr. Kryler. So, Mr. Kryler, you're the full-time person there?
Correct.
Okay, just so I understand this, okay?
And these guys are just alternates?
Yes. My only question is, and I'm putting it out to these three for my vote, your vote or your own, is that I would see value, and you could tell me that you don't see value, do, but I think where Deputy Chief Sartell ran a regional dispatch in another town, that if you one of you two weren't there, I think he'd be a valuable asset to add his name to this too. Is there any reason we couldn't do that, or you would recommend against that?
I don't see any, and it's,
He is attending the operations board meetings.
All right. I just didn't know if you two were out, where he's gonna be a base.
I think between the three of us,
Okay, that's
odds are
all.
one will be able to
But
make
do you
it.
understand what my question was?
and I think,
All right.
I think knowing the status of that, Mark probably knows a little better than I do, is if for some reason Mark and I aren't here, and
Right.
as an admin board, I don't think they would object to the deputy going. They obviously wouldn't have voting privileges or whatever.
Yeah, I've been attending all along.
All right,
We don't
but-
have voting rights.
But do you understand my question? It's not that, I want to make sure you guys have the tools, and he is a tool, because not many deputy chiefs have actually run a regional, and so a lot of public doesn't out there, so that's a benefit. So we'll leave it alone.
Yep.
Second, I'm ready to vote. Thank you for that.
Okay, all those in favor
Aye.
of that? All right, great.
Thank you for your
Done.
patience.
Okay, 3.7.
I move that the board appoint Ben Simmons to the Fire EMS Department as Lieutenant Paramedic effective December 20th, 2017 to June 30th, 2018, with a 12-month probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Now, before as we go into section 4 here, I'd like to ask that we move 4.3 to the first position and take care of that one. I cannot, I'm in a butter to the Old Brick Store, so I cannot participate in that vote. So
All right.
just to keep things going smoothly, if I could ask the clerk to make that motion first, and I'm not going to participate, and then I will in the following.
So just for the record, Madam Chairman, I'm taking over the chairmanship at this time.
Okay,
All right, for the record.
just for 4.3, yeah.
So do we have the clerk have a motion at this time?
Move that the board approve the 2008 renewal for a wine and malt package store liquor license number 00011 PK 1286 for Karish Patel, DBA Old Brick Store at 440 Main Street, Townsend, Mass.
Second, all those in favor?
Aye.
Let the record reflect, Lizzo, yes, Clark, yes, and King abstained. Also let the record show that the chairmanship has now been transferred gladly back to Cindy King.
Okay. Can I ask the clerk to pick back up at
The
4.1?
clerk is going to start passing
Signing.
these down so that we can get signatures wherever they're required. And then please pass them back to me.
Don't give them to Joe.
Okay, you can keep reading and I'll sign.
Everything has at least 2, right?
Okay, going back to 4.1, I move that the board approve and sign the 2008 renewal for an all-alcoholic restaurant liquor license 00020RS 1286 for Albert S. Marino Jr., Bailey's on the Green, LLC at 40 Scales Lane, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
All those in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
What am I doing about this?
Thank you. I'm going on the first one, but I guess it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
I move that the board approve and sign the 2008 renewal for an all-alcoholic restaurant liquor license 00018RS 1286 for Albert S. Marino Jr., Bailey's Bar and Grill LLC at 18 Main Street, Unit 109, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Go back to where I'm supposed to be.
We're going 4.4?
Move that the board approve and sign the 2008 renewal for an all-alcoholic restaurant liquor license 00001RS 1286 for Robert Dickout Townsend House Restaurant at 2 Depot Street, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
4.5.
Hold on, don't get ahead of me here.
You need another water down?
I'm all set, thank you. I move that the board approve and sign the 2018 renewal for an all-alcoholic package store liquor license 00010 PK 1286 for Chanetha Un Wine Nook, 18 Main Street, Townsend, Mass.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
4.6. I think.
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve and sign the 2018 renewal for an all-alcoholic restaurant liquor license 00014RS 1286 for Chung Wai Yu Yee's Village, 350 Main Street, Townsend, Mass., contingent upon a valid certificate of inspection.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
4.7.
Did we get any more ayes there?
Aye. Aye, aye,
Aye, aye,
aye.
aye.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I move that the board approve and sign the following 2018 common victualler license applications.
Second.
As written.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have a bunch,
I do
we
have
have
a
some
question.
serious signatures here.
I'm sorry, but I do have a question. What's a victualler license
You can
mean?
sell stuff.
Food.
Is it food?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. So so all of these people potentially can sell food? Does food mean like a candy bar or something too?
All the above, I think.
I'm going to get you the definition right now.
That's okay, you can get it to me later. I just thought it was probably good for us to know, since,
Capabilities for cooking, preparing, and serving food is required to have a common victualler license under Mass General Law 140, Section 2.
Asked and answered.
thank you.
Certainly.
And can we keep those together, please, so that I don't get scolded? 4.8 says, okay, I move that the board approve and sign the following 2018 Sunday entertainment license applications as listed.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 What are you doing with those?
We done with all that?
This is nice, they're color-coded.
You know the packet. Then we're gonna get on to other stuff.
Madam Chair? Are we done, all the,
No,
Almost.
oh, all right,
More
sorry.
coming.
I'm gonna give these here to Sue, if that's all right.
Thank you.
Probably gonna get past in front.
Thanks.
we got all these two that I separated.
Hmm?
Those are good. Thank you. Oh,
There's the new
never
one.
mind. Ugh.
Madam Chair, I move that the board approve and sign a 2018 renewal for Class 2 license application for Richard Coyview County Auto Sales, Inc., 118 Bayberry Hill Road, Townsend, Mass.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now, this is a little different. Two places on this one. You with me? Signature's getting worse.
This last one doesn't have third signature. I think all the rest do. We'll keep that together.
Oh, that's, uh-oh.
How did I miss that one? It must have gotten stuck. Thank you for catching that. You did? Thank you. Paper clip.
Yep,
Oh,
got it.
we're getting-
I'm on top.
We're good. We all
Oh.
set? 410.
Madam Chairman, before we move on, one, I'd like to thank Sue for reading all those. And second of all, for the record, I'd like to state that Mr. Kryler never touched any of those forms, so he doesn't have to answer to Carolyn if they're correct.
All right, 4.10, did you say?
Yes.
Thank you for giving me time to take a drink. 410, I move that the board approve a road opening permit for Unitil Fitchburg Gas and Electric for 103 Fitchburg Road for gas service installation.
Second, we're asking for discussion.
Okay.
If Sue doesn't have any first.
I'm all set, thank you.
Thank you. If you go to the second page, and Mr. Kryler, you can help me out, I see the start date of 11/20/17. That has passed. So are we granting a permit for something that's already started?
What's the date it's signed?
I'm just trying to understand, it could be me misunderstanding it, but
I mean, this came in 11/15, so they wouldn't have started unless they've got the permit in hand. So we were scheduled to meet originally 3 weeks ago now.
It looks like the application was
11:15, 11:13, yeah.
All right, well, thank you for this. The only follow-up question I have, and I'll approve this tonight, but many, almost all municipalities, Mr. Crowley probably knows this, he's been doing this for 25 years, don't allow for any street cutting after November 15th.
The plants are closed.
For multiple reasons. One, as Mr. Crowley said, the plants are closed for good asphalt, but the other is, where we have two of our first responders here, is that we can't have roads that are being cut when storms could come in and that type of thing, providing for safety. And then the last thing I see on here is, and again, I'm not questioning, but it's my job to look at details here. It says here, detail officer required, and I don't believe that's up to the utility to decide that. The only person under Mass General laws to decide if the detail is necessary or not is the chief of police by statute. Am I correct about that? So maybe we need to correct that form, that,
Yeah.
not tonight. but-
Requested
Yes.
instead of required.
Right, thank you. Am I,
Yep,
okay,
perfect.
that's all. And, but I don't know, I'm one who likes, if I look
They
at
wouldn't have
it,
done this
It's
already.
not checked
would
off,
they?
though.
it is checked off, it says no.
Would they have done this
Not on the
already?
original.
All right.
They definitely did
But
not.
here's the other deal is, the only person who can say that should be the chief of police.
Yep, but it's not checked off on here
It's
anymore.
checked off, no.
It's checked off no.
I'm looking at it. Oh,
Well,
I have the
we have two different
original.
ones.
well, then that's a concern there, so.
No, completely different. One's dated today, one's dated 11/13.
Same
Then,
cut?
hold on. 410 are we on?
No,
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I have
This-
411.
This says 410.
I have 411.
It's
Hold on.
permit number 1618CA.
Yeah, dated 11:15.
Mine's
dated-
dated,
I don't have the second
these are
page.
different.
I see what, it's on the back.
It's dated 11/15, but it's signed on 12/1.
Yes,
Oh, all right.
Yeah, that's
and I just filled this one in.
still 19 days ago.
Yeah,
Oh, you filled,
I
oh,
filled this
oh,
one in.
I see what you did, that's why I'm confused.
So she-
All right, but they wouldn't have done these already, would they?
Shouldn't have.
All right, can you, I mean,
Yep.
I don't wanna.
Yep, I pulled it aside.
Absolutely. So we're gonna approve it
But there's-
tonight, but we'll just
There's
check into
two
it
of
for the
them, the
future.
410 and 11, I'm not happy about.
I didn't look at the other ones yet, I'm
Yeah.
only dealing with one at a
I know,
time.
but they're very close.
And
They're
two-
both road opening things.
We'll
Okay.
move on with this, but just, my point is here is that going forward, I would like that, there's no road cutting except for emergencies after November 15th. Because, you know, it's our responsibility to make sure these roads are put back the way they are. And so,
Okay.
thank you. Do we need a vote on that? Do we have one?
We did,
No, we didn't vote.
all right, all
Gordy-
those in
Gordy had a
favor?
Aye.
question.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you for that, both of you.
So 4.11.
Yes.
Un minuto.
Oh, do we have to sign this?
Yes, you do. I dated it, you can sign
Thanks,
it.
Jim.
Board of Selectmen, there it is.
411, I move that the board approve and sign a road opening permit for Eustis Cable for 15 Scales Lane to bury conduit and cable on the other side of the road.
On the side of the road.
Second.
He added the word other.
Which sort of,
On this side of the road.
is this 4.11?
Boy, you need those cookies.
Is it on that side of the road?
It's
not
on
the other?
that side.
Well,
It's
the other
the-
side.
Yeah, I said other.
Well, no, the only reason I was saying I
I
don't.
just wanted to see if you were paying
Well, I
attention.
was, because here's the deal, is there's a big difference going down the side of the
I
road. and going across.
know.
It's
Right.
8 o'clock at night.
I know.
Thank you. Sign. Appreciate it.
So did we vote on that? Oh,
No,
all those in favor?
aye.
Oh, okay.
Aye.
Aye.
So we're on the schedule.
More stuff for Carol.
Yeah.
Am I saving this for something?
I'm gonna put it right with
We'll
your
give you
other signature. Okay, 413.
413, I move that the board approve the 2018 holiday schedule.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Okay, no signature
Okay.
needed.
Nope. Now, work session. Can we take a 3-minute
Absolutely.
recess?
I move that we recess for about 5 minutes.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll be back in 5 minutes. Okay, welcome back. Could bring us back to order after our recess.
Madam Chair.
5.1.
Thank you.
Town Administrator.
First, you have 5.11. You have a memorandum in your packets from the library director. And she writes, "We posted and advertised for the position of library tech. We received multiple applications for the position. Jean Erda was selected and she accepted the position. Please approve this decision." The word approve is used there, and it's in fact also used on the agenda, but it should be affirm, because statutorily the library board of trustees have hiring authority. So you're basically just affirming, if it's your pleasure.
Can I have a motion? Yep.
I move that the board affirm the hiring of Jean Erda as a fractional employee for the position of library tech with a 1-year probationary period.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Affirmed.
Wonderful. Next, you should see in your packets, Chase and mine right now, right here. You should see some minutes from a school committee meeting of August 7th of 2017. And I just draw your attention to the bullet letter E, which is near the bottom of the page, school resource officer update. There's a lot of discussion at the special town meeting particularly about what was the school's position on not having a school resource officer, because we didn't have the officer that was trained available. And I just wanted to have for the record that in that update, in the minutes of the school committee, it does say Superintendent Landers advised the committee that currently we do not have a school resource officer in North Middlesex. She's been speaking with Townsend's chief of police, Chief Bailey, over the summer and recommends putting the position on hold. So just so everybody's on the same page, it was done in concert with the
That's how I
superintendent of schools.
remembered it too.
Lovely. Next, review and approve private way snow removal policy. Per your policies as a Board of Selectmen, anytime a new policy is introduced, you can approve it the night it's introduced, only by unanimous vote. Otherwise, you take it under advisement the first time you see it, and you take it up at the next meeting for a vote of consideration. It wouldn't be my expectation that you would vote this evening, but what you have before you is a private way snow removal policy. You'll remember at your last meeting, there was a discussion about the plowing, sanding, salting of Jonathan, is it Jonathan Way? And you deferred and said that doing them piecemeal or hodgepodge wasn't a good idea, and if there was going to be some consideration, it should be done by policy. You charged me with coming up with a policy. I'd like to take credit for writing each of these words, but I didn't. I pilfered from the MMA website for what was the most up-to-date policy. So you'll see, it's a very decent policy, 3 pages, that covers everything from liability waivers, exclusions, who has the authority to determine whether a private way meets the sufficient standards for us to be able to do maintenance on, winter snow maintenance. So if it'd please the board, put this on the packet for the next meeting for
That'd be great.
for consideration. And if you have any thoughts or concerns about it between now and then, just let me know, and I'll make notes on the one that gets in your packet next time.
Thank you for doing that research.
Certainly. Right, next, update financial summit meeting. You should each have a copy in your packet of a document that runs landscape and pretty long, and it's also nearly as useless as any document you'll find, given the fact that when it's on my screen and things are highlighted, you can still see the numbers underneath, but when it went through as a third-generation copy through the machine, anything that's highlighted, you would really need to strain to see what the numbers are beneath it. But I think there's still value in the document for the reasons that I'll highlight. If you go to the second page, this is the 5-year revenue expenditure summary. That box that is very dark under fiscal 19 at the bottom, which is the surplus or deficit, that shows as $303,746 projected deficit for next year's budget before we start. And that shouldn't be a surprise. based on the fact that we had this document last year as a part of our budget rollout, and we projected deficits out for the next 5 years. Things are subject to change, obviously, as we make adjustments, as current data becomes available. To point, that number was a legitimate deficit number as of the printing of this document and as of the day we held the financial summit. It's no longer a valid number. The number is now slightly north of $500,000 in deficit. And I'll tell you why.
Am I supposed to be excited about that?
I'll tell you why. The debt schedule has been updated by the collector treasurer, and you'll recall that while we're paying off a good bit of debt in fiscal 19, the debt that we're paying off is exempt debt, which means that it was exempted from Prop 2.5 as debt exclusion. So while it's great that the payment goes away, so too does the revenue. Because on the debt exclusion, once the bill's gone, so too does the money. So we have coming on next year, the West Townsend Fire Station and the pumper. And those, as new debt, were borrowed inside of the budget, inside of the levy limit, not as exempt debt, which means they get put on the bottom line of the overall budget. So when Barbara updated the table and put the debt schedule in after working with our financial analyst, that's the bump you'll see there. So in the current iteration, which is newer than this document, which you got last week, that's $500,000 up now that we're chasing.
That's not good.
It's not good. Let's have a commercial advertisement on that issue for a minute. Barbara asked me a question that I'd never heard anyone ask before. She said, just because something was borrowed inside of the levy limit, does that preclude the town from going to town meeting and asking approval to put it exempt from the levy limit? So if you're going to do a debt exclusion, do you have to do it from day one, or can you change gears midway through? And the Department of Revenue came back with the answer that you can change gears midway through.
So we could ask.
You could ask the town. Interestingly,
We don't have to go to town meeting.
right, interestingly, when you do a debt exclusion, there are two components. One is the authorization to borrow, which is the town meeting. And the second companion piece is the ballot vote to exempt it from Prop 2.5. Because we've already had a town meeting vote to do the borrowing, all that would be required would be to go to a ballot to see if the voters coming through the booth would choose to exempt it from Prop 2.5.
And when would that be?
It could be any time during the life of the loan, which is 20 years.
So theoretically, we could put it on for April?
We could. And while that is, as a separate issue, is lovely, it doesn't change the fact that when I'm charged with balancing the budget, I still will see that $500,000 negative number as I work through, because I won't know by the time this needs to be passed in a town meeting what the outcome of that be. So it may be that it would benefit the bottom line further down the road, but for the purpose of fiscal 19, it's a non-issue for me. It's there and I must cover it.
Is a simple majority on on a ballot?
It is. Yeah. So, I just draw your attention to that. A lot of thought needs to go into whether that's something that gets pursued.
I mean, do we have an
What are the-
alternative as
yeah,
far
what
as
are the alternatives?
finding
What's the alternative?
$500,000?
The alternative is to find a way to make the budget work. I
The
will have,
$500,000 deficit?
I will have been quoted at last year's town meeting when the question was asked as saying, this is being covered with inside the levy limit, when questions were asked about, is this going to raise our taxes? So I answered that question when it was asked last year, so my charge is to make this work. If if the ballot box voters decide to do it differently, that's great for 20.
You said what last year?
Somebody asked when we were doing this on the floor for the borrowing last year, is this going to raise our taxes? Something to this effect, if you look at the video. And my response was, it won't raise your taxes because it's not a debt exclusion. It's not an
Right,
override.
it's within
We have to
the
cover it
levy.
within the levy limit.
Right.
So I just want to be clear that I have stated that publicly. That is what we have today. That's what I'm charged with covering. If there's a change down the road at the ballot box, that'll be for next year. But this year, I've got to make this work.
So this, but this is fiscal year 19, this is July 1st.
Correct, July 1st coming up.
So where are we now? We're okay now.
We didn't have the payment now. The first payment is next year.
Right, so if we have a ballot in April, that's for July 1st.
But I won't know that while I'm building this budget.
Exactly.
Oh, right, I know that.
So he has to plan for 2
Which
Right,
is
so-
a
so
week
it could-
before town meeting.
Right, so it could be that it passes, and then we have, for instance, the fire station is a $140,000 debt and interest payment per year. So it could be that we have an excess of $140,000 in the operating budget that would then close to free cash for fiscal 19 if it passes at the ballot. But I can't count on that.
So he has to prepare like it's not gonna pass,
Right.
right?
Yep.
You'd be negligent if you did.
Right.
It's tough, but it's life.
So let's
So
work
we
through
have,
the,
but otherwise you'd have a week. I'm just saying,
Right.
saying that we're gonna do it that way.
Thanks.
So you'd have a whole week.
but the budget
If
would already
if they
have,
said no.
right, but the budget would already have been posted, the budget would
Oh.
already have been noticed, the warrants are up 2 weeks in advance. So again, I'm looking at that as a
But
maybe
realistically,
for the future, but right
So
now
you-
it's here.
Right now, you're
Absolutely.
that you're giving yourself. I mean,
Unless you call a
on your-
special, unless you
we're
call a
on your-
special election between now and when the budget's due, yeah. I'm gonna
Right, but I
cover
mean,
it.
for right now, you're telling us you want to find $500,000 in the
And
budget.
again, the 500 isn't all attributable to the debt. It was 3, so it's roughly 2 that's been added by this debt. We were already 300 out
So
before the
how much
debt.
money, you want to look, but you, right now,
Right now.
it's a $500,000 that you're
Correct.
talking
All-
about. You
all
want to
good.
find it in here somewhere.
I will, because I have to.
But that's what you're telling us, that you're going to,
Yes.
you're telling us that that's your plan, is to find $500,000 in here.
Yes.
In the
And
budget.
and I'm going to tell you
Into
some
that
places
column.
as we
Oh,
go
I
through the
know.
next pages.
Oh, you're going to go through this now?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
all
yeah.
right.
Because there are presumptions built into this
yeah, because
model.
you don't look like you're upset about it.
Not yet.
Okay.
He's
Let's talk in
he's got that stubborn look on his face.
Let's talk in another week.
Yeah.
There are presumptions built into this plan
Yeah.
that all feed that deficit number. So all of these pages run back to that page. So if there's something in here that's an assumption that we know can be changed based on new data, it too will hit that. So if we
you're
know.
gonna go back and change all the data and then show us a different number?
We already have. There are certain things between the printing of this and today where I have made changes based on data that we now have. We've had things certified from DOR, for instance, on what our local receipts were. So we know we can look back and say, is that a legitimate number or should it be
Okay.
higher or lower? So we
Some of this
make
is
adjustments as we go.
estimated revenues that we're allowed to
Correct.
say, all right.
So if you look at we'll skip the 5-year revenue projection because it is relatively.
Where are you, Jim?
The third page.
Okay, gotcha.
And it's relatively simple. You got 2.5% on your real estate, which is the first category, property tax levy. Projected new growth, then you add in your debt exclusions as they exist. So that number it's very formulaic. It is what it is. So we're not going to be seeing any change there. State aid cherry sheet. Right now, there's a 1% increase built into this formula. We've seen, on average, over the last decade, 2.5%. On average. That doesn't mean we're going to see 2.5% next year. Right now, 1 is there. So it may be that we see a little bit more there. That would then get adjusted. We would see that feed back to the front sheet. But right now, we're being as conservative as we can with the 1%. Local receipts, there are 2 in particular that we've reduced the estimate on. Those are the 2 black boxes you see there. One is licenses and permits, and the other is fines and forfeits. And we've dropped those based on the fact that we've looked back at the trend. And while I think it might be safe to keep them where we had them, I think erring on the side of being more conservative is appropriate looking at the trend over the last 10 years, particularly in the last 2 years. So those 2 will be adjusted downward. If we get, after second quarter receipts are posted, or even closer to town meeting, when we take a real-time look at close to third quarter, we may see that that's not necessary to bump it down, that the trend is actually sufficient to keep those where they were, but right now those are being reduced. The very next page, other available funds. You'll note that in the fiscal 19 projected column, there is no free cash being proposed to be utilized in the operating budget. Again, that's it should be budgeting 101 not to use the one-time revenue in the operating budget, so there's none of that proposed. The other point I'll draw your attention to is that second line says other SRO revenue, school resource officer revenue. There was in 18, you see $80,000 that was budgeted as a revenue. This is the issue we talked about at town meeting.
The
We
balancing
dropped
act.
that.
Right, and then we had to jump through hoops to make the budget balance because the position wasn't filled, which means we weren't able to bill, which means we weren't able to get the revenue. So what the accountant has recognized, has recommended, and DOR has concurred, is actually not showing that as an other available fund, but setting up a revolving fund, separate and apart, outside, and it is what it is. It carries from year to year, so it doesn't bleed back into the general fund if it's not spent. And corresponding, you will see a reduction in the operating budget of that, the equal amount. So there'll be a position and associated expenses off book, basically, so it still balances out.
That's what a revolving fund is for.
Yep. And wetlands protection, this is an amount of money that historically is roughly $5,700. It's not big money, small money, but the account's getting depleted, so we're going to move away from that one for a while, let it build itself back up again. But that's roughly $5,700 that's used to offset the expense of conservation's budget and the operating budget. Then when you get local receipts at a glance, the next page, we can skip through. And property tax growth, that just shows our new growth trend over the past 10 years. That also then feeds back into the revenue page on the property growth line. Next you'll see.
Where are you?
Next page.
New property tax growth by property class.
Gotcha.
So that just shows the 10-year average, and that number feeds back into the revenue page. Next page is the 5-year expenditure projection. This is one that I want to spend a few moments on. The very first category, municipal services salaries, you'll note that that's a $4.4 million number in fiscal 19. Everybody see that? That contemplates a 2.5% increase on any piece of salary that exists in the budget. Now, we have collective bargaining agreements that are already locked down at 2%. So that means that there's money there. There are others that are not yet agreed to, and they may not be agreed to. The story at the table along the line has been, we have the ability to do things today. Once the model is done and the true financial condition of the community is knowable, it may be a different story. So the point there is that number shows 2.5%, but it won't likely be all of that. Next, you'll see a 1% escalator assigned to everything else in the municipal services non-personnel category. And that the task for departments submitting is to submit level on expense. So we're showing a 1% bump there, and we likely won't see that. So that's what, 2.357, so it's another 25 grand or so right there. Education, both for Middlesex and for the tech, are plugged into the 3.5% increase. The tech seemed comfortable with that when they were at the summit meeting. I did meet with Superintendent Landers yesterday, Monday morning, and she said that they should have a better sense at the beginning of January, but she didn't seem put off by that projection. So it may be that those numbers are good. It may be that it'll come in a little less than that. I know that there's going to be pressure brought on school budgets from other communities, but for our purposes, we've got budgeted in there a 3.5% increase. Employee benefits, this one's important. Retirement, we've got plugged in, that's an actual number. So we've already received our assessment from Middlesex Regional. So that's no longer between 4 and 6.5, which is the range in the projected percent increase. That's the actual.
And what was the percentage increase?
It's on the very next page. I'll tell you 6.5. It came in on the high side, and that's because they're still trying to cover the,
I know.
the unfunded balance. Then if you get to the health insurance, this one is worth talking about. The number that's built into the model right now is a number that is 6.8% higher than last year, because our health insurance carrier, Maya, has said their rates across the Commonwealth are going to range increases from 6% to 14%. We're coming in at 6.8. That's a strong year for us. But we're not going to see a 6.8% increase, because already committed at the table was plan design changes. And with plan design changes will come, they call them decrements, reductions in percentage points off of the total bill. So without any heavy lifting at all, and with changes that are probably 3 generations old already in the marketplace, so not bringing people from where they are today, which is a very rich plan, to today's street plan, but going very slowly, we can pick up 3 points easily. With a little bit of effort, we could see picking up the full 6.8. So it may be that'll be flat in the budget, so there's money there.
Madam Chairman? Not to interrupt, but I just think it's a time here to end things we do in the health insurance. I think it's, Mr. Crowley should have some credit in that, for walking us through collective bargaining to keep our costs controlled. And at the time we did it, which is best practices, but it could be a life-saving now. So, Mr. Crowley, I think it's point to be noticed that we'd be in a lot more trouble if you hadn't done all that work.
Thank you.
And that's legit. It's totally legit that not many people are being able to still give good health care to employees but control it. And that's all from Mr. Crowley's work in collective bargaining. And to the employees who saw the need. So I don't want to get off track here, but I do want to praise the employees who saw the need in the town, and to Mr. Crowley. So thank you. I'll try not to interrupt him.
Thank you. Next thing of note is going to be the next page, where we're looking at the expenditure projections. And I just want to draw to your attention the very last section that says reserves/other, allowance for abatements. The town has historically carried about $100,000 in allowance for abatements. So that's the overlay. And for people that aren't familiar with that, what that means is every year we tax people on their real property. And if a person gets a tax bill and they disagree with it, they have the right to challenge it before the Board of Assessors. If the Board of Assessors disagree with their challenge, they have the right to appeal it to the Appellate Tax Board in Boston. If either at the Board of Appeals level, locally, or the Board of Appeals level on the state, they prevail, they get a reduction in their tax bill, and we would conceivably be then out of balance in our budget, because we had predicted getting $100 from them and we're now only getting $95. This amount of money is held aside in case there are those adjustments that need to be made mid-year to offset any reductions that are granted based on appeal. The best practice is to keep this number as a percentage of your annual levy. So you look at the note on the far right, it says 0.75 of net annual levy. It's listed as a goal. Now, when the Collins Center came through last year, they said that that's an aggressive goal to get to. Now, the delta is only about 25 grand for us. 100 last year we put in, and it would be 124 and change this year. I'd like to hold as tight to that as possible as we go through this exercise, because I think we do need to hedge on the side of caution if there are appeals, particularly this coming year. We're in a revaluation year, which means people are going to see different numbers based on what the market is with this reval. So I just wanted you to see that's.
Don't we have a rolling? When you say reval, what?
We do. The biggest chunk of the reevaluation is being done this year. So now I can have Vicki come in and talk to that in more detail than I'm able to share with you. But the concern was that this year in particular, people are going to see things differently than they have in the past couple. So it may be that there's
In terms of their evaluation?
Right, there's a triennial, a third of the community
Yeah,
each
I thought
year on
that
a rolling basis.
Everybody's on a 3-year. Oh, we're starting another 3-year cycle. Is that what you mean?
I will defer to Vicki.
You don't-
I can get you
Yeah,
an
it would
answer,
be
though.
good to have her come in.
Yeah. So the takeaway there is trying to get towards the best practice of having 3/4 of a point of your total levy limit on escrow in your overlay. Right now, this model has that.
That's a good thing.
we'll see at the end of the day what's left.
But the number, all right, the percent, the .75 of our annual levy
Yep.
is the number. So as we've gone through this whole thing, as we change the levy's not gonna change.
Right, from year to year, it'll change. It'll grow by
But-
2.5%,
But
and any new
we're trying to
growth.
find, you're finding money to take care of that 500,000. Our levy isn't changing.
Correct.
But- okay,
Levy
so
Levy's the
never-
one when we talked about taxes. That one
Right?
is
The levy's not
immovable.
going anywhere.
It is
It's not
what
going
it is.
anywhere. Never mind. Okay.
Labor costs, this is just a breakdown of the 2.5 points for the general government by functional category that we voted at town meeting. So that just, again, feeds the earlier sheet. The next sheet just shows a more detailed breakdown on the benefits. So you see county retirement, health, Medicare matching, unemployment, life, and deferred comp. Those, again, feed that earlier sheet. The next page is water department enterprise fund revenue expenditure. This is as was submitted by the water commissioners last year. There are going to be occasions where you will see two columns at town meeting, which is something that took place last year. Last year there was a request for additional salary for a position that was covered by a collective bargaining agreement. The collective bargaining agreement did not provide for that salary increase. The Board of Water Commissioners voted to increase the salary beyond what the contract allowed nonetheless. I budgeted what the contract said in my column that said TA recommends. The Board of Water Commissioners had a different number in theirs. Town meeting ultimately makes the decision. Town meeting last year voted the higher number, but that number can't be spent. Because if a higher salary is sent through to the town accountant will kick it back and say the governing document, which is the contract, doesn't allow that. So there may be, I just bring to your attention, there may be two different columns running down that list. There was one, you'll recall last year, a request for legal counsel, $10,000 as well. My column showed zero there because it's not allowed. The water commissioners carried their $10,000. That passed at town meeting. Again, it can't be spent.
That's in their budget.
It is their money, their budget. But again, they can budget 1,001 things unless they're allowable by law. They sit there as funds in a budget line.
So the accountant
And they won't be
won't
expended.
release it anyway. Right, okay.
Correct. The next several pages are the debt service, starting with the 10,000-foot view, and then it breaks out into a more granular level of detail on the next two pages. So, big picture is it was predicted last year to be ugly. It is. So, hooray, hooray for predictions. But the tool is doing what it's supposed to do. This is what we bought last year, is something that shows us in real time with a change in one cell what it does to the bottom line 6 pages away. So it's not going to be easy. Budgets are due back from departments by January 1. So any moment, budgets will be coming in, and we'll upload everybody's requests into the requested line, see what that does, and how it drives the number, and then we'll have a really decent starting point to know where we start digging in. So for right now, that's what we have. Okay. And I note that we have 2 new members of the Finance Committee, one of whom's in the audience tonight. I'll get copies of the documents because members of the FinCom currently have this stuff, so I'll make certain
When
I get it out to this
are
week.
you going to update this?
I have it updated. I need to clean the colors so it prints well, but...
Because when we met last week for the
Email it to
summit,
you.
you said that there were some numbers that
yeah,
just had not gotten updated yet.
It's clean now, it's updated. I'll take the colors off. I'll make hard copies for those that like those, and I'll put them out on the email with those that I got as well.
Madam Chairman? To Mr. Crowley, for you. You said there was 2 members, and thank you for your service, first of all, sir. And who's the other member? I'm going to get that. I just want-
Scott DeMorris, the same name as your, the strategy, Trish.
Ponderosa Street?
Yeah.
She's on FinCom?
No, her husband.
Oh, her husband.
I just was
Oh, I see.
curious.
I see.
Wherever you are, sir, thank you for your time.
Right.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
So
Moving,
that's a full contingent. I think that's a full
I
board now.
believe it is, yeah.
Nice, good. Thank you, Joe.
Next, you will see IT grant update. We've spent some time talking about the fact that we are a community compact community, and we did receive the budget documentation grant. So the document that we just spent all that time talking about comes from having received a grant from the Commonwealth under the Community Compact. And what we've not done is gone in for one of the follow-up grants, which is what this issue is about. I don't believe there's actually going to be anything in your packet.
Okay.
On the, no, that's next.
Sorry.
The grant application for IT is not yet available. It's being released in January on the 15th. I can give you guys each one of those. You don't need to look at it in detail now, but just for your consideration
Sue?
at a later time if you'd like.
Cindy?
So the 15th of January, the application will be available for Community Compact IT Grant Program. And the the application must be submitted by February 15th. And grants must be completed by June 30th of 2019. So you've got a year and a couple months to get it done. It's a relatively simple application. I've looked at last year's. What Basam, our IT coordinator, and I've been working on is putting together the scope now, so once the application is ready to be downloaded, we're ready to upload all the relevant data. Toward that end, we have scopes on hand from two companies for the type of work that we're looking at. And one is Acuity Technologies, and the other is Winslow Technology Group. And the deliverable here will serve as the guts of the grant application, what we're seeking. There's a narrative in the Acuity Technologies. This was actually provided as a result of a $5,000 grant we got last year from the compact. There's a narrative piece in here that will also serve as the basis for the grant application. This is in fact written as a budgetary estimate only, not a valid agreement, with the understanding that this serves as the precursor to the grant
What
application.
do we want them to do for us?
Well, the deliverable is an update of accomplishing the following objectives: address Linux-based servers and firewalls, Linux-based email server, replace switching and manageable commercial-grade hardware, and addresses issues with wireless in the 4 locations of Town Hall. So it's our entire network infrastructure. It is all of our hardware in terms of our servers. Right now, we're working on a wing and a prayer, and I mean that in the best possible way. Steve Cloutier, who was our IT coordinator prior to Basam coming on, I think he'd blush for me to say in front of him, I think he's a genius. He knows how to build anything in a MacGyver-esque kind of way. And that has benefited us financially over a long period of time because he's been able to purchase components and build for a fraction of the cost of what it might otherwise cost us. However, we're at a position where Steve is no longer with us. And for instance, we had a public records request recently, somebody at the table might be aware of, and it required a conversion code. I don't even know the language to even explain to you what needed to be done, but something needed to be done that Steve could only do because Steve's the one that built the program. So we had to bother Steve at his current place of employment, have him come and handle this issue because of the way the server was set up. So this will get away from all of that.
Yeah.
And as much as there is a benefit to having saved that money, if, God forbid, something were to happen to Steve, we've got a system that, while operable today, if something happens tomorrow, we've got nobody to go to. We have no institutional way of correcting it. which is why going out on the rack and redoing the system in its entirety based on rack technology, what's out on the street today, is the angle we're taking.
So it's going to be allowable, is infrastructure allowable? As part of the
Yes,
grant? Oh, okay.
it is.
All right.
Absolutely. Yep. Again, this is a priority right now. I mean, the budget and $500,000 you didn't see me getting anxious about yet. I'm anxious about this one because this one needs to happen.
It's needed to happen for a while.
It has. And
I've threatened our town administrator, this is the third year that I've said I wanted this grant, and I love Jim, but I've told him I'm going to hold
she
him
has said,
personally accountable.
tongue-in-cheek, I'm sure, she said to me that
If this doesn't
my future
happen.
employment is contingent upon receipt of this grant.
I mean, I think it's great that there's a grant available, and yeah, go for it, but regardless, I mean, you can't ignore the need
Right.
for that stuff to get done.
Yep. And you'll recall that Bassam had a request in before the capital planning committee for this upcoming special what was that upcoming, most recent special town meeting. And we asked him to pull it off because we're going to wait and go through the grant process first. So he's been working on this absent consideration of the grant. The grant only makes it easier.
Does that include software?
It would, yes.
Okay, and how the software gets maintained, updated?
Yes.
Okay.
We need so much. We are so far in a different.
Well, I mean, if you start
Century.
thinking about Office 365, and
Even before we even get to that conversation.
no, I know,
We have a
but you
grant
need to
sitting
think
here.
about the optimum, because that's your goal ultimately. But to be able to do something like that, where, basically everything's updated for you, you don't have to go from one machine to another, spending time and hopefully not running into problems too. The times have changed.
Yeah, I think a few years ago, you had to go from one computer to,
You
the
still
computers
have
we had
to.
in the town hall, you couldn't send a file from one computer to the other. I think
We had
that,
some people working Outlook. We had some.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
they're
Some
people
all on
working
different
Eudora.
systems.
I think
Yeah.
we had computers that came from somebody's house. I mean, I don't even know.
So,
But we've,
Okay,
but
fix it.
my concern, I just want to, there's money on the table, we're on the compact, there's grants available, we should be getting our packets together we should be ready for the grant application, not like, oh my gosh, there's a grant,
So
throw something together.
when do you apply?
January.
it's available January 15th, and the applications are due February 15th.
And when do you hear?
Pretty quick.
Well,
June 30th, 2019.
yeah, you got to finish the project by June 30th, 2019. It doesn't say when you'll know.
The black.
They're pretty
is-
quick. That's when you have to complete the project, if
Yeah,
you get the
sorry. It
grant.
doesn't say when
They're very
we'll know.
quick. They're very quick, and we have a priority because we didn't get one last year.
Right.
The people that got
Yeah,
one
we've not
last year.
been fed recently.
Yeah, so if we have a good grant application,
No pressure.
no pressure. But if we have a good grant application that really expresses our needs and what it is we want, and that we want the whole 200,000 that we can get, if we can, then there's no reason why we shouldn't get it.
Okay.
Madam
Correct.
Chairman,
Yes,
in the,
and I won't be happy if we don't.
okay, and I'm picking up your karma and your vibes and all the above. But in the spirit of Christmas and glass half full, I would just like to bring a little point here, because I don't want Mr. Crowder worried about his job over the Christmas holiday.
I don't think he's worried.
I know that, but sitting, what the people need to know, and sometimes we need to remind, is sometimes people make good decisions. And about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, sitting in that seat you are, was Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And it's very important to realize that, because we were one of the first in the state's history to become best practices and get on the compacts, that this is all possible because of that. So, right, it's big, that's, we need not to forget that.
You guys did the heavy lifting on that.
Well, we were ahead of the curve instead of responding to the curve. So in this tough budget that we have coming, with your diligence, Madam Chairman, and our support, me and Sue, hopefully we can get some money that we don't have from another source. But-
That's right.
But because of best past practices, and the lieutenant governor's sitting right there, they've been good partners to us, so, Mr. Crowler, I hope you can relax for Christmas now.
Next
Thank
we,
you, Madam Chairman.
next we see 2.6, Public Authority Towing Update. In your packets, you should each see a copy of Public Authority Towing bid evaluation sheet, and additionally, there would have been a copy of the bid specifications, the packet that went out. The bid was on the street for a little over 30 days. We have historically had 2 vendors that have worked on a rotating schedule, Harbor Auto Body and Shepherd's. About halfway through the bidding period, we received a letter. Glenn Shepherd came and saw me and gave a letter saying that he had sat down with his family and considered what the public authority towing responsibilities are and the level of effort that was required of his family to continue doing it, and they had made a family decision to not continue. There appears to have been some word on the street that the Shepherds were fired in some sense. I mean, that's come back to me twice from 2 different people, so nothing could be further from the truth. What you have is a family that has served this community long and well and decided there are other ways they can serve the community, and this is not one that they are interested in continuing. So we were left at the date of opening the bids with 1 submittal from Harbor Auto Body. If you follow the bid evaluation sheet, you'll see that there's a first section, minimum required specifications, and then there's a break that says if all minimums are met, proceed to the evaluative section. Then there's the evaluative specifications. On the substantive minimum specifications, DPU certificate, enclosed, secure storage area, hours, response time, DPU regulations, insurances, all were met. So those all show as a Y or yes. The last piece of the minimum required specification is something that was contained within the bid documents, which is, it's a little new to think of it this way, but in sitting down with the police chief and the deputy chief, the public authority towing agent is an extension of the police department. They are going to be on the side of the road at 2 a.m. with a citizen of this community or another. And but for our calling them and selecting them, they wouldn't meet that person on the side of the road. So we have created the environment in which those 2 people meet at 2 a.m. on the side of the road. So what drew my attention most was that we didn't have a file that had Corey checked the drivers. And I have no reason to believe that anybody that's been driving has an issue or wouldn't pass a Corey. But the fact remains, we didn't have a file that we would be able to show that we had gone through the effort of making certain anybody representing the police department as an agent at 2 in the morning on the roadside was Corey checked. So that's required. The additional piece that number 7 that is highlighted represents is something for the board and the board alone to consider, which is integrity. There's a provision on the front page of the specification that talks about that very thing, that whoever is an extension of the police department, an agent of the town's police department, has to have integrity and has to be beyond reproach. There can be no consideration for anything other than that. So when we get to the point of you as a board making an award, that is the piece that's left for you to consider. If whoever is before you as an applicant gets a Y in that column, we then move to the evaluative specs, and those are all filled out below for Harbor Auto Body. Everything is as it should be and as it needs to be in the evaluative section. So, having said that, given that we've only received 1 bid, and given the fact that we've historically had 2 operators, given the fact that when I've spoken to Mr. Shank, the owner-operator of Harbor Auto Body, it was not his interest to have the whole thing to himself and be responsible for every week. The chief has reached out and spoken to, done an active solicitation and spoken to some adjacent communities, tow truck operators, to see if anybody has an interest. Because, as I earlier advised you, when I put this bid out, I did not solicit anybody. Because the expectation was, as I stated at the meetings of the board, that we would have the same two people. We weren't looking to bring in competition and take it away from the Shepherds or the Shanks. It was basically, we needed to do it better. We didn't have a complete file that protected the town from a liability perspective. Given that we only have one right now, my recommendation to you this evening is that we continue status quo between now and your next meeting, which is Mr. Shank is going to continue to operate as he always has on his week. The chief has found a public authority tow company that in fact does towing for another police department in our area that is willing to step in as needed on that alternate week, that I do an abbreviated solicitation. So I take the same pack that I've already put out, I put it out on the street again for that firm or any others that might be out regionally that have an interest to submit. In fairness, before you make an award, we should have both weeks covered. So we would continue with Mr. Shank between now and your meeting of January 16th, I believe we talked about. And on January 16th, I would have, all things considered, 2 public authority tow companies before you for your consideration and award to represent the town for 3 years on an alternating schedule.
Question. What happens between now and the next meeting in terms of the alternate week? Who's doing that?
The chief has somebody that is committed to being able to step in. for that
Somebody
period
from
of time.
town?
No, somebody from an adjoining community.
Can I ask who it is?
I'm sure I couldn't answer you, but I'm sure the chief probably could.
Eastbound, excuse me, eastbound transit towing recovery in Pepperell. They're AAA certified, and they do some towing for the town in Pepperell.
And there's no guarantee that they will apply. There's no guarantee that anyone else will apply. It may be that we're exactly here next month again. But with only one right now, and Mr. Shank having committed to the 1 week that he's always been doing, between now and your meeting in January, we stay status quo and I get back out on the street for someone else.
Okay.
Sue?
Yeah, I just didn't realize this was as stringent as it is. Maintain a secure storage area in the town of Townsend. How's a Pepperell firm gonna do that?
Well, those are the evaluative. So if the person from another community doesn't have one in Townsend, they will get a lesser score.
Okay.
When I've done this in another community, it's been as simple as green, yellow, and red in the score sheet. And if you meet it, you're green. Everybody gets green, everybody's equal. If somebody can kind of do it, like, yeah, I'm in Pepperell, so I'm right next door, that's great. If somebody comes and says, yeah, I'm in Tewksbury, they're going to get a red. So that's why it's the evaluative.
So each one
section.
of those things would be graded then?
Would be evaluated,
Is what you're
yep.
saying?
Yep.
Well,
Joe's not AAA, right?
I do not know. It's not required that you be.
No, I mean, it's just a thought. I mean, I don't have AAA anyway.
I don't know.
That's like, 'cause I know sometimes just trying to find it, there aren't a lot of AAA.
Yeah, I don't know whether he is or he isn't.
Yeah, but I mean,
No,
I think it's hard if you have,
Less companies are doing it.
not
when
to,
I have AAA and I've never gotten towed by anybody in town. It's always been somebody out in
do
East
you
Oshkosh
have to wait a long
somewhere.
time? Is it? I don't
Well,
want
no, they
to go
usually,
against AAA on TV here.
no,
but-
they're usually within whatever time they say, and it's usually an
okay.
hour or so.
Oh, right,
But-
okay. I would be told for a while.
No, no. Any additional questions on that before your next meeting?
Madam Chairman? Let me think here. I haven't talked to you two, obviously, about this at all, but I have had brief conversation with the town administrator and asking him that before I'm able to vote, that I may need some kind of guidance from council representing us in other venues, and also from Labor Council on potential issues before I'm able to vote. So I will, at that point, leave that alone, Mr. Crowder, all right? But just so you know, I asked, that one of my jobs is to do that.
Does that have anything to do with the same kind of things that I'm involved with, that I might have the same question, or is that something?
I would suggest that it not involve that.
No, not at all.
At all.
Oh, okay, because I don't feel that.
Yeah. no,
That okay.
no. It shouldn't involve anything with you personally.
No.
Oh, okay, just, okay.
No. And so.
I was just curious.
I'm not being evasive, but on a preponderance
Yes,
of
you are.
caution.
Yes, you are, but you
Well,
need
some
to be.
things are
But I
private,
need
you know.
Well, no, but I would.
But it's-
we be-
it's-
But I be,
you know.
we be, but I'm only speaking for myself, think that I'd be foolish without that advice.
So you're
Okay.
just asking to be able to work with the town administrator and town council?
No, I'm just asking.
He brought it to my attention. I now recognize that it's something that I missed that should be looked at, so I'm gonna get the answers. So you'll each have them. It'll be information for everybody.
And then, if I could, Madam Chair, with your thing, just a quick thing here, which I thought this was well put together, all this, that, but I stand to be corrected, but every police tow, not that it is, has potential to be a police action. What I mean by that is, God forbid, it could result that it could be a motor vehicle homicide, or a narcotics interdiction, or a domestic event. So that's why the ability to work with the police as an arm is important. Hopefully, we don't think that would happen too often, but we'd be irresponsible. We didn't realize that every police authorized tow could be something further. Hopefully, it's just a public service to someone who's disabled. But it always has potential to be a criminal investigation. So that's all I'll say on
All
that.
right, not to beat a dead horse, but I'm going to ask a question of the police chief while he's here on that
You
same
don't need my, you're
issue.
the chairman.
I know, but I was like, that just made me just think about something that if we had, I mean, usually, just my thoughts, that if there's a police tow, usually it's the most common arrest thing is an OUI or something that has occurred, and those are pretty basic criminal cases, but sometimes there might be a motor vehicle homicide or something more serious where a motor vehicle has evidence. Would that still go to,
No, that
would it go somewhere else?
It would be towed by probably one of our contract towers, but it would be towed to a secured facility. It would be escorted by the police. It would be a piece of evidence.
Okay,
So
and it would be go
handled-
somewhere
it would be
else
handled like a
where
piece of
evidence is maintained. It
And-
wouldn't
and
go
then it
to
would
a
be-
regulatory
would be
RT.
its
examined
process.
by experts.
I see, okay, that was just the question I.
That's an
So
educating
we're
question.
not, when we're talking about this, we're not getting into those more serious. We're just talking about,
But here's the deal.
which is still serious.
Well,
And
and here's
many
the,
police departments have several bays, and one bay usually assigned to evidence.
Oh, so it could
So many times.
go to the station.
We only have one, so it
Oh.
would be hard to tie up the
It
one
usually
bay.
goes like a state police lot or something, right?
Yeah, but it's
Somewhere. Depends
best
on,
in
it
a
depends on the
secure lo-
situation.
It has to be a secure location.
Okay.
So we would find, if that happened here, we would find a secure
Okay.
location.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Next, you have authorized Lance McNally, the chair of the planning board, to sign a contract for the Conway School. The town meeting authorized actually, town meeting didn't. Town meeting gave the finance committee money back that the finance committee the week earlier had given to the planning board to hire a consultant to do the master plan. This is that contract. It's written in the name of Lance McNally. You're the only board that's authorized to sign contracts, so
Oh.
we're just seeking your approval to allow Lance, as the planning board chair, to sign this contract. And this would be to update the plan, the master plan.
So
So
we've already approved this at town meeting.
Indirectly.
Or what?
the money's
Indirectly.
there.
Okay.
Yes, it's funded.
So I move that the board authorize Lance McNally to sign a contract for the Conway School for the,
Second
for the
discussion.
master
Okay.
plan work.
second.
Okay, for discussion.
Sue, do you have anything?
Nope.
Mr. Crowley, I'm sort of, which is not unusual, we're confused. So you're stating to me that this was approved and the funds are there?
Correct. Planning board went to the FinCom because there was a quick turnaround they needed. FinCom granted them the funding out of the reserve fund.
Okay.
It is funded. This is the negotiated scope. They interviewed a number of different firms. This is the one they selected.
And you're good with this?
I am, yep. This is a great price, and it's a good group.
That's all. Thank you for clarifying. Madam Chairman, I'm ready.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Okay, hopefully we'll get the master plan completed soon.
Yes, a couple of very brief things that
Busy,
have
the planning board's busy this year.
that have come up. There was some discussion that apparently took wing over the last day or two about the greeters, so-called, at the police station. I think much to the credit of two people in town that I regularly read on Facebook, they reached out to the chief. They sent emails to the chief, and they asked the question. And I think the more we can encourage that type of interaction, the better we'll all be. Because, postulating into the air or into the ether, it ends up being 57 comments, none of which is based on going to the source and getting information. So in order to kind of get to that point and get to the source, the chief did respond, and in fact did go to the website, the police department website, for Facebook page rather, and make a statement. So the concern appears to have been that the station was going to go dark and there wasn't going to be anybody there, and that is in contravention to what was presented by former Chief Eaton and Chief Boynton on November 1st of 2016, when they said there will be somebody there during business hours. So the chief responded, and I'll read it just briefly so people that didn't get on Facebook and read his page have the information. Thank you for your question. As you know, last year prior to my appointment, the town went to a regional dispatch, which meant dispatch personnel would no longer be present at the station. We've been making accommodations to schedule civilian staff at the front desk. The practice will continue. In fact, we are moving the administrative assistant to the first floor to be able to cover the front desk as well. In addition, our station has cameras inside and out that are manned and recorded 24/7. There is a direct communication with the dispatchers at the Regional Communication Center through a telephone intercom in the lobby. This process allows someone to speak with the dispatcher immediately. With our upgrades in technology, dispatch will have the ability to buzz someone in the lobby into a safe room. If someone is having a medical emergency, they should dial 911 so that emergency personnel can be dispatched and not attempt to make it to the police station. Our police coverage is 24/7, and the officers are always available if needed by a community member. I appreciate that you took the time to reach out for this clarification. Chief Bailey.
So what is the difference?
What we have done as an interim measure, and I emailed you back, so I don't know if you had the chance to see it yet, because I sent it late this afternoon. As an interim step between what we were when we were standalone dispatch and what was presented by the chiefs a year ago, which is having somebody there during business hours, is we have had bodies on site that were not just greeters, but were in fact oftentimes dispatching. They were doing local dispatch because
the
the ramp up
communication wasn't working?
Right, because the ramp up going regional hasn't been as smooth as anybody would have hoped for a number of different reasons. So when we were in the crisis last year, we brought on people at a premium rate, and we begged and we pleaded for them to come in and help us, and we put a high number on it as best we could, and people came in. We kept those people until very recently. The chief made the judgment that we are finally at the point with the regional dispatch that we can back off of that interim position and now just have the business hours covered, which was the original plan that was contemplated by the chiefs a year ago.
Okay. Nan? I'm glad you brought this up and that we're talking about it so that it will alleviate anybody's fears or concerns. I'm most concerned about how do we keep that kind of thing from happening going forward. I'd prefer to hear something like that prior to implementing it, because it avoids
Right.
all of the
Yeah.
chatter, if you will.
Yeah, and I think
Okay?
it's an interesting example, because the thing that happened that has caused the chatter is nothing more than the thing that was promised. The
Right,
thing
but-
that's different is what we've done since then until now. So to your point, people became accustomed to the interim step when we changed it, advance notice would have been great, because then we could have said, oh, by the way, we're going back to what we originally contemplated doing.
Right, so that if we had had this meeting and discussed this,
Sure.
you know, in one of your updates or whatever, prior to it happening, it would have been much,
Absolutely.
much better.
Yep.
Okay,
I thought it
so,
already happened.
Well,
I didn't realize we had that much staffing.
Yeah,
Until-
we've been carrying the,
I didn't, I thought that we had already,
and I don't know if people really, if others understand, and I don't understand all of the detail other than reading what Chief Boynton is putting his updates to us, you know, and it's more complex than I even want to understand. But what I gathered from it is that the whole technical part of things and who talks to whom about what and how that communication happens and how you leave messages for somebody or how you get through to somebody was not working properly until fairly recently. And I'm glad that you guys have been on that, okay? But I think the good news is I think that's been transparent to the community for the most part. I don't think it's caused any bad things to happen, okay? I think we've gotten through it, but it's really been a trying time from a technical perspective and from a communication perspective. So it's good news that things are smoothing out. But I appreciate you bringing it up, and maybe we can learn from it too.
I think a couple of the other things, if I could, Madam Chair. It's understandable that people get anxious about public safety. It's understandable that people get anxious about a change like this. A year or more ago, you could walk into the station, and on the other side of a sheet of glass, there would be a person, and that person could talk to you, and that person could call an officer in if you needed one, and if you were in immediate danger, that person could sequester you in a location nearby. That person couldn't come out on the other side of the glass and do anything. God forbid, there are cases where people have come into the station and dropped in. Dispatchers that have come out to try to provide care are then derelict from leaving their station. I mean, it's a mess. So that you always had a body and glass. When this is the way it's intended to be, when all the technology is up to date and in place, you will go into that building and there will be a body and glass. They'll be on a video monitor, but the same service that live body on the other side of the glass provided, the person on the video monitor will provide. If you come in, I need an officer, they will call an officer. If you come in and say, I'm in trouble, they will buzz you into a secure area. If, God forbid, you come in and you drop, just like that live body on the other side of the glass, this person, too, won't provide care for you. Which is why the chief wrote, and I think it's important to highlight, if you are having a medical emergency, my goodness, don't come to the police station expecting that someone is going to provide emergency care for you. I mean, if you don't have a phone and you're in front of the station, by all means, come in, because somebody will be able to get to you quicker than if you're on the side of the road. But call 911, because the other side of the house are trained to get to you and provide better care and far quicker than necessarily having an officer come in off the street. So when people say, you know, it's going to be a dark station and it's going to be a lesser quality service or a lesser level of service, that's not so. In fact, what we're finding, when you listen back again a year ago, and I encourage people to do so, it was November 1st, 2016, it's on YouTube, the town's channel. When you listen to the town of Harvard, the town of Lunenburg chiefs speaking, notwithstanding hiccups starting the process, it's a better system for them. They get dispatched quicker. They have, administratively, you don't have the headache of trying to manage that entity yourself. It's now being managed regionally, where you have you have economies of scale. But in terms of the fear of it being a dark station, the same level of service that you're getting with a live body is going to be the same thing you'll be getting with the same face on the screen. And just, I hope people can find some comfort in that at some point, because I know it's not there right now.
I think it's because it's new, and a lot of us, myself included, have questions on exactly how does it work.
Sure.
Yeah, I think it's important for the community to know that it works, that regardless of who we are, where we are, whatever service we need, or if somebody came into town and had no idea even how big Townsend was, or whether we had a police station, or if we have 40 officers on one shift,
Right.
or ambulances fully manned in 3 different corners of the town, regardless of who you are, you need something, whether it be police, EMS, or fire, you're going to get it. And it's going to be, there's no broken link.
Right.
Because we have gone to regional dispatch and there isn't a live body sitting in a building someplace in Townsend, doesn't mean that you're not getting dispatch.
Right.
Or you're not getting, if you call, whether you call an administrative number, whatever number you have on your, programmed in your phone, or sitting on an old fire alarm poster that you might still have next to where your wall phone used to hang.
Still hangs.
You know, with the dot, never mind. That long cord that got tangled that I had in my kitchen. But regardless of what numbers, well, if you still have a 3-digit phone, it might not work.
Okay.
But regardless of what number you have, you're still going to get, somebody's going to answer that phone. It's hopefully going to be at Devon's and not Dunkin' Donuts. But you're going to get, regardless, you don't know where they are. You don't have to know where they are, because they have the radio that they're going to call
Right.
411, or they're going to call an ambulance, or they're going to call the fire department. When I first moved to Townsend, there was not one full-time firefighter. Everybody was a volunteer or paid on call. But how many full-time people do we have in the fire department now?
4.
Okay, and what about how many paramedics do we have on duty at all times?
2.
We had none of that. But yet, fires got responded to. People, everything got done. And it's still happening. Hopefully, things are a little bit faster and more technologically better. But nobody has to worry about getting the services. I think that our team has made sure, even though there's administrative or some technical difficulties,
been
that
glitches.
we don't even,
Absolutely.
the glitches that are there, those have not directly impacted a citizen or somebody passing through getting a service, an emergency service. And I mean, my involvement, with public safety, every once in a while there's a glitch. You can't, there's been dead zones. When we had the old radios, you knew if you couldn't call any dispatch if you drove through Willard Brook. You had to wait until you got to the other side. Either call before you went through or call. And there's dead zones. I don't know if there are any more dead zones. There's a few dead zones for cell service, but you don't have to worry about that stuff. The glitches are always going to be out there. There's going to be technology that's going to be weird. They can have things go wrong at Devon's, but there's always going to be some redundancy in the service. We don't have to worry about having a cop show up when you need one. Even if it's not a Townsend. Sometimes we have 5 calls, Lunenburg comes. You're going to get the service that you need. And ambulances, you might see an ambulance come through town and go to an accident from another town.
So I have a question.
We're good, and I think our citizens need to feel safe in that. And if you walk into dispatch and it's dark, it shouldn't be dark, completely dark, but there's a video. You're still going to get whatever service you want in there for.
I have a question about non-emergency stuff, because it used to be that I would call 6214 and somebody would answer the phone and they would say it was recorded, which I can understand that, but it's the non-emergency line, and it's because I wanted to talk with the sergeant who was heading up the investigation for the break-in at my house.
Or the bicycle rodeo next weekend, or whatever.
Whatever.
Those administrative calls are still handled the same way they always would have been. So you'll dial the number, the same dispatcher, instead of sitting there, will answer, call is recorded, how may I help you? Say, I'm looking to talk to Sergeant so-and-so. I say, one moment please, I'll put you through. that puts through.
Okay, but I think that might be how it is now. But I had a situation myself where I called the non-emergency number and asked to speak to somebody. And I was under the impression that that somebody wasn't available, or and they never really said that, but they took the message. I'm going to take the message and have you call back. And I'm assuming now that the reason that they did that was because all of the communications weren't set up for them to just do a call transfer. Is that correct?
I do not know.
It's still a work in progress. It's getting better. All of those calls funnel through the dispatcher to the respective police departments. They, and whether or not the person is at the police department, it will go which
But you would normally get the
direction it is.
voicemail.
Right.
And that wasn't
You didn't,
happening.
right.
That wasn't happening. Normally, that's exactly what would happen. They would have just put me through to their number, and it would have bounced to a voicemail. But instead, they took a message, and within like 2 or 3 minutes, I got a phone call back. Okay, so it's like,
That's good
wait a
service.
That
minute.
worked. That still worked.
It's going to
Well,
go
no.
to voicemail.
I thought you were going to say you never got
No,
called in.
from my perspective, it felt like nobody was there, or it felt like there was technology
Right.
in between us.
Right.
And I wasn't concerned because it wasn't an emergency, but I felt like I wasn't getting the kind of service that I used to. No reflection on the staff.
I think I agree with you with that, but it's got to the point that it's not cost effective to have that person there all the time.
Oh, no, I don't mean
He's
that.
talking about, she got in the Neshoba, asked for
Yes.
Officer X and Y,
Yes.
and they said, I'll take your message. And
Yeah.
it seemed like,
And then-
it normally be, one moment please, and you transfer to Officer X and Y.
Right.
And it wasn't transferring.
Okay.
You know, it
They
was
are-
obvious it
That is
wasn't.
now.
They are
But
transferring now.
it is now.
Yes.
Okay, good.
I-
So I'll call
I
again.
can tell you by the number.
I'll call again.
And I think
voicemails
too,
that
and
have.
I think sometimes there's administrative processes that we all have to get used to change. Technology with phone, or but just technology or people. If I call up, I don't know who's on duty, but yet I might want to talk to somebody that's working on something that I'm involved with, and I'm going to call. Hey, I want to talk to. Well, let's say a name that Sergeant Johnson. I want to talk to Sergeant Johnson. I don't even know if Sergeant Johnson's working, and the dispatcher may know who the officers are that are on duty at the moment, but may not have. I'm assuming they don't have the full schedule.
They know who's working.
But I mean, who's going to be? When's John going to be in next? They might not have that. They might not even care about that at the moment. They're worried about what they're going to do today, and they're going to, either check and whatever the procedure would be. But I wouldn't expect this to get transferred to. I wouldn't have expected that before, that he'd have his own phone number. I would think that there would be a message taken.
It didn't feel.
Yeah.
It didn't feel the same.
Right.
That's the only way I can
And
describe
the
it.
objective is to make it feel the same.
Exactly.
And we're a lot closer than that,
So,
but we're not there yet.
But the good news is that we talked about it, that there was a legitimate technical reason why, and that technical reason why has been fixed. So it's more like it used to be.
Right.
I'm just saying it from my perspective as a person who's lived in town and knows the number by heart and always knew that somebody, I could get through, and I didn't feel that way that time. So that kind of bothered me, because I said, oh God, tell me it's not going to be like this all the time,
Try it again.
I will. I will surprise
That's not how
you.
it goes.
And it'll be recorded too.
I was just thinking of technology that's changed considerably, which was really harder on all of our emergency service departments, particularly dispatch. These things.
Sure.
And I don't have a landline in my house anymore. That's been gone for several years, and most of us, and I have my actual cell phone number's out-of-state number, which I finally got Jim programmed to know that it's me. But
Telemarketers.
yeah, nobody
hung up
takes
on
my
it all the
call
time.
if I call direct. I don't use Google Voice. But if you call 911 from a cell phone, it still goes to state police, right? But if you call, I mean, you just can't. That's I think was here really pulled hair out for everybody, like with a delay in getting help. So there's
They
so
actually
many
know where
things.
you are.
But they do. I know. I've called and hung up on, and the state police have called me right back, and they're like, "We know where you are," and I'm like,
We see you.
I know you do, and I'm sorry. This is the problem. It's no longer there. It's okay. I'm so sorry I called. But it's but there's so much that's changed that we all have to,
Madam Chair?
regardless of what side we're on, we have to get used to change. Yes.
I could just take a minute, just one quick thing.
Okay.
With the greeters. One of the things we found is that, and you see across the nation, there are many dark police stations at night. It's just, it's the trend. I don't like that. I understand it. But what we found is, with one administrative person, there's too much work. We found a lot of errors, a lot of things that have been not done correctly, left to be done because of the amount of work that's in there. It's too much for one person. So what we're doing we have the one, and I don't like the term greeter, but I guess that's what you call, the one greeter that will be working part of the week, and then the administrative assistant will be covering the rest of the 5 days during the week. But we've also tasked that person, the other person, with picking up administrative tasks. She's very good at it. She's willing to do it. It keeps her busy, because it's not busy. And I understand when you're walking through the door and you go up to the window, it doesn't matter whether it's busy or not. You want to be serviced. I get that. But we've also found an economical way to get other things done that need to be done in the police station and still have that person covering the window.
How's this hitting the budget?
It has hit it hard because we've carried those people at a premium rate far longer than we had anticipated.
Compared to budget?
And
What was budgeted for that? Because we had talked about that at town meeting, I know.
Right. It was listed in the, if you look at your budget from last year, there's a notation in the note section
Yes.
that talks about having a certain number of hours at, and I think it was in at 15 an hour at the time. So we've been carrying people at 25. So there's definitely going to be an impact. Now, we've also got other positions that have been funded that, for a variety of different reasons, haven't been filled or people haven't been paid. So there's money in the budget that, at the end of the day, you know, the objective is that we're still going to be good. So bottom line, we're
but
still
we
going
have
to be good.
reduced that rate. So
Thank you.
Madam Chairman?
I have one quick, only semi-related question for the chief. Is the drug box still in the lobby that people can?
It's in the inner lobby, so you need to be let into the inner lobby.
Okay.
And the reason for that is it's
Security.
allow somebody to walk in and put something in an open box in the lobby of the police station.
Or
without-
take it.
Or pick up the box.
Well, like
Yeah,
what's in the box.
walk away.
We don't let them put a box in. We want you empty what's in the box.
All right, but I mean, they use it, that green thing that.
Yes,
that's what-
but
Is it? it's-
we have somebody there to watch what goes in, so it's not something that could hurt us along the way.
Oh, so it's more observant. Oh, that's a good idea. But,
Yeah.
so.
We don't
so,
ask what it is.
Like, if I have drugs,
We don't.
which I do
count
have
it,
some
we don't-
things I want to bring down there, which I'm asking partially personally, but
Yes.
also partially for the
Yes.
community to hear it. So if I want to bring something down there, I should come down during normal business hours?
That would be the best time. If you come in a non-business hour, dispatch will call an officer in.
An officer has, okay, I wouldn't
Yeah.
want to go through.
Yeah.
So, but normal business hour, Monday through Friday kind of thing, somebody
Yeah.
will take my
You
drugs.
can do it anytime. I mean.
Right, but I mean,
You may have to wait.
I don't want to cause an officer to
Right.
come in, but
Yeah.
normal business hours, somebody will take.
We
it.
don't ask what you're putting in,
Oh,
but we
no,
watch,
I know.
we watch, you know, you can't put some things, you can't put things in, but if you're putting drugs in there, we just watch what goes in.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Gordy, you had, keep shutting you off, I'm sorry.
Madam Chairman, I know that you want to go on to the next agenda thing, but I would
Right.
like to this time use a saying that Mr. Kryler says. Do you say the 10,000 foot
10,000-foot view, yeah.
Well, I like to give a 20,000-foot view to all reasonable people out there. And sometimes we need to take the 20,000-foot view to understand where we were and where we're going, and sometimes it's difficult, painful. So if we go back a couple years ago, we were one of the few 351 towns, we were going to be decertified for 911. So we were in crisis mode. We weren't getting all the monies that might have been entitled to us to do that. Moving fast forward, so if we go to treating it like a medical emergency we were in a full-fledged medical emergency, open heart surgery, transfers, and everything else to keep that going. And due diligence by a lot of great people. And how much grant money did we get from the state when we went over there? $300,000, $400,000?
Just over 300,000.
So, quick ballpark is from the 20,000 view, we were going to need approximately $1 million in taxpayers' money to make it correct over there. And not only do we not have to spend $1 million to correct what, we're not going to get into why it happened, we got $350,000 that the taxpayers didn't have to come up for, and now the surgery's done. But here's, if we think about surgery, we're in rehab. And sometimes rehab, well, we are, all right? And rehab, as you all have gone, whether you had a collarbone or this or that, we all want it to be done in a week or two, but it's painful. But I have told, and the chief here, the two chiefs and the new deputy chief, that they're going to get us through this. And the other thing is, I believe the growing pains will be less and less every week. But the thing is, we're also going to have it never happens again to us. And we're fighting for every dollar, folks, every grant that we're entitled to now is being applied for. So I think we're being physically responsible. Most of all, we've gone from triage of being decertified, which is inconceivable, but that's the facts, to moving to the future and addressing everyone's issues. So I personally want to thank everyone involved. So many people have done a lot of hard work here. But the rehab's here, and I'm just asking reasonable people out there to be patient, but to communicate. And the chief, both chiefs are always available, and give them a chance to give you a truthful, not misinformation answer. And as Sue says, sometimes when we communicate before we run amok, it works better. It's a difficult job, rehab, folks, and in the long run, physically responsible for the future. You know, we have deficits in the future here, but the other thing is, we have the right people to do the right job now. So let's let them rehab, let's support them, and just remember where we were and where we're going. That's all. And thank you for your patience. All right? So I'm ready to move on.
I am too.
I have a couple very brief, and these are so small. One you asked me for, patronicity.
Oh,
Patronicity is the grant funding that we talked about at the last meeting, where through mass development, you can identify a project in your community, and they will fund 50% of it, and you do crowdsource funding for the other 50%. They will come out and they'll do a video for you in advance of your crowdsource funding drive. It's a really cool program. So we talked about the Common, we talked about a bunch of different places. I've had a meeting with the folks. The Common is not as attractive a grant opportunity in their mind, given the dual layers of authority in the town versus cemetery and parks. One thing that they actually did like, and this is just an idea, is the piece of grass behind us here that we have is overflow parking. Sometimes we'll have a town meeting and people will park there. Town meetings are in the spring, depending on the weather. Who knows what you're driving onto or walking through to get there. You then got to climb up the banking. And the idea is perhaps to create a multi-purpose space there with pervious pavement. So you still have, from a green community's perspective, you've not created an impervious sheet where you get rainwater that doesn't percolate back into the ground. You have pervious surface, so there are a number of different styles of pavement that are pervious. You put in for drainage from the back parking lot. Right now we have just direct drainage to the top of the ground. It's picking up any of the pollutants that might be in the parking lot out here from somebody's car that might have dripped or who knows what. Put in, they call them rain gardens, which are filtration gardens. You could put in a small pocket park area where you could have a couple of picnic tables so people from the town hall can actually eat their lunch outside as opposed to sitting on the table right outside the door here. Additionally, you could have folks from the rec building coming across and doing their arts and crafts out on the tables in the summer days when they're at their camp or other activities. So you'd have a combination of uses there. And he was very interested in that, and he thought that that fit their scope pretty nicely. He told me that there was going to be another opportunity coming up, and it was going to be a very short turnaround, but they had consulting services available for communities that wanted to apply for a patronicity grant to have a landscape architect come in and do a concept, meet with you, talk about the options, look at the piece of land, do a conceptual plan and a budget, projected budget, to assist you basically to create the application to patronicity. I received that just this evening at about 5 o'clock, that information, so I'll be putting that together within the next week here. Hopefully we'll get that opportunity, but if there's a different idea or another idea that comes to mind for a public space, they like the fact that it was proximate to the downtown business district, that there's overflow parking for town hall and for businesses, that you might have a bike rack and people that eventually want to use the bike path. There are a whole different number of reasons they like that it would serve two buildings, the rec building as well as the town hall. So just wanted to bring you up to speed on that.
But the thought would be that part of that was for parking.
Absolutely. The primary piece would be parking
Okay.
with handicapped accessibility up to the main lot.
Okay.
Around the edges, appropriate drainage in rain gardens, and then some passive park space
Yeah,
tables.
that sounds good to me, but always in the back of my mind, I'm thinking about
Maintenance.
the Hart Library too.
Oh, absolutely.
And I wanted to make sure that if something ever comes of that, because I believe in miracles, that there is parking nearby.
Absolutely. Oh, we also have the additional overflow. Orient myself. I don't know where I am.
Over there.
Yeah.
What we just talked about is right there. Yeah.
No, not this piece right here.
Okay,
It's the one on the way back corner.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
back corner.
Near the rail trestle.
Yeah.
So we have that piece as well as,
Yeah.
for additional
In
consideration.
patronicity, they do more, I don't know that artsy is quite the right word, but something to, beautify. Beautify and create more
rain garden
community,
sounds really good.
community
Not just
usage
functional,
and
but-
really, if you go to their website, you can see a lot of the projects that they've done in Massachusetts and a couple other states.
So how about if you post a link on our website so people can see the kinds
Absolutely.
of things
Yeah.
they've done?
Yep. Okay. Town council and labor council, you previously authorized that go out to bid, got that all out on the street, so we should be seeing responses back. We already received one call from a firm that I'm not familiar with, but they've requested an RFP. We've sent copies to Copeland and Page, so they were advised in advance that this was coming, so it's not going to hit them by surprise. We've had a few winter incidents already. I've seen wonderful commentary on Facebook about how good a job our folks are doing. I've only received one complaint, and I had a resident come in and sit with me. I thank him for that, and he told me what his concern was. I had the acting highway superintendent in as well. We talked about the concern. The highway superintendent addressed the concern. And the next storm issue that we had a couple days later, the treatment that his neighborhood got met his expectations, and he let me know that. There's a follow-up call that I've received that I'll be addressing tomorrow, that there may be a little bit more work to do with the folks that are providing the service in that neighborhood. So, but just so you know, everything that I've heard was nice, was good, with this one exception. And in case you heard this one exception, which I know at least one of you has, it's being addressed. And lastly, received 2 letters through the website. And one of them was from a local resident. He's a young student at Applewild, and he asked a question about police services in town and expressed some concerns. And I copied you each on the response letter, so I just wanted to make certain that this young guy, Master Lassard, that he gets a nod of appreciation publicly at this meeting, because too many people don't engage and go to the source. And at his young age, he engaged and went to the source, so that's a good thing. Additionally, got something from a young woman who is a recent grad from North Middlesex and is attending St. Anselm's, it looks like, and she had a concern about her neighborhood not having cable service. And This is the neighborhood that we're all aware of, down Baybury on the Pearl Hill side and Vinton Pond Road. So I was able to respond back, and I copied you each on that response as well earlier today, letting her know what the history has been on that, the good work that the Cable Advisory Committee did in negotiating for capital to do that work, but all the roadblocks that have gone up between now and then, culminating with the fact that this board authorized the hiring of specialized counsel to try to get this thing uncorked. So it's just nice when people reach out, and I just wanted to publicly, thank them, because it's good to know that people, particularly young people, are engaged and interested. So
You know what I think is nice too? They're writing letters,
I know, yeah,
you know? That's a good thing.
it's a lost art. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, so the next, any other members of the board have any announcements, updates, and reports?
The only thing I wanted to just mention is if somebody out there wants to contact us as a board, I really appreciate it. I like hearing from people, good, bad, or otherwise. But please don't expect a response. If you're sending it to all of us, don't expect a response that is going to reply to all, because that means that we're having a discussion outside of an open meeting, and that would be in violation of the open meeting law. So, because I had somebody who questioned, gee, I thought, I was going to get an answer from all of you, but we can't have that kind of a discussion via email. And I just want to make sure everybody understands that. It's not because people aren't being responsive, although each of us individually might answer. We don't want to get into a conversation.
And the follow-up concern to that is, if you respond individually, and then you think, my work here is done, if that person then shares your answer with another member of the board,
Exactly.
you haven't intended there to be a violation.
But it
there is
becomes
one.
a serial violation. That's right,
I
a serial
found there's been
conversation.
a couple of people
Yes.
have sent things to all of us, and then I'll reply individually.
And then they send
And
it back to all
send
of
a
us.
reply to all, so that everybody knows what Cindy
Exactly.
said.
Yeah, and
Or-
that's, and we can't,
Hypothetically.
and we can't do that.
It's like, no,
Yeah.
so I've like stopped responding to
Yes.
people because I can't participate, because even though I'm not deliberately violating the open meeting law,
That's
I
right.
violated the I'm part of it, and that would go against the board. There would be if somebody filed a complaint, it would be a decision against the board, even though
It wasn't.
no one member
Yeah.
deliberately did
That's
it.
right, that's right.
And when
So-
other boards do it.
So I
it's
just
the
wanted to
same.
bring that up so people understand that, and just a suggestion, because I do like letters, and writing letters is becoming, unfortunately, a lost art, but you know what? Someday you're gonna have to still write a letter. So
I hope not.
writing letters might be a good way to communicate with us as a board, and maybe a lot better than an email, because we all see it, by the way. We all see all the correspondence that comes in, goes into our collective bucket, and we all go through our mail, and we each sign that we saw it. So I don't know if people realize that, but we do see the communications, and if any of those communications that come through, if any one of us think that deserves to be talked about at a meeting, we can actually ask that go on the agenda. So I think that might, not that I'm anti-technology, but sometimes we can overdo it with the technical way of communicating, when in fact, having it in writing is
Yeah, and even the
is
letters,
good.
sometimes, somebody might have a concern. You can send a letter to the Board of Selectmen's office. That doesn't, we're gonna get it, well, or at least our administrative staff will get it first. And it might be something that a different board is more appropriate. And something will happen from the right department. Because we don't have to handle everything. And we can just, okay, well, it got off to the Board of
Or
Health.
we can see it and see
Yeah.
that it got forwarded.
Right, yeah, yeah. And things can happen better that way than,
So I
Actually
don't
utilizing
want to take
Facebook and
any more
emails
time
and-
about it, but
yes, it's getting late.
that was
But thank you.
all I wanted to say.
Mr. Clark?
Madam Chairman, due to the fact that it is December 20th, and I like this meeting to end before it's December 21st, I will not be doing any updates. There's nothing, except for one thing I would like to
Except as always.
accept.
Except-
I have a shirt that says
One
that.
last thing.
I will show you that.
Last thing.
But I hope this is in
We're
the
not done with the meeting
Christmas
yet.
spirit, all right? To 99% of the reasonable, beautiful people of Townsend, I have a season and Christmas message for you. But to the other 1% in the Christmas spirit, if you don't have anything good to say, don't say anything at all. So I'm going to do that to the 1%ers, but the only thing I will say to them is the word enough. But going to the 99% of the beautiful people of Townsend in this Christmas spirit, I wish the following three things for you, sincerely from the bottom of my heart. I hope that you find happiness. I hope that you enjoy good health. And as a town, and for you personally, I hope we find peace. Merry Christmas to you all, and I hope we're done before the 21st. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Amen.
And I just want to just have my usual, we still need people to volunteer for boards and committees. The two committees I'm trying to field, actually three, I should say. Capital Planning still needs some volunteers. The Community Strategy Committee, which I talked about earlier this evening, and the Disability Commission. There's a lot that can be done on that commission, so anybody that's interested in that, just get those volunteer forms in and we can do some really good things around here, and that's all I have. And our next is to review and approve the meeting minutes from October 30th and November 14th and November 21st.
Madam Chair, if there's no objection, I'd like to put these all together. I move that the board approve the meeting minutes for October 30th, 2017, November 14th, 2017, and November 21st, 2017.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And we're caught up on those, I
I
think.
move that the board review and sign the payroll and bills payable warrants out of session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, executive session. Executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on bargaining position, and the chair so declares, and the chair does so declare, with respect to the fire union.
Madam Chair, I move that the board go into executive session pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position, as the chair has declared, with respect to the fire union.
And if you could amend the motion that will be adjourning.
And we will adjourn from executive session.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Roll call vote.
Roll
Oh,
call.
roll call.
Sulicio, aye.
Gordon Clark, aye.
And Cindy King, aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night. We're going to go into executive session and adjourn from there.
Merry Christmas to Hartley.